range transportation planning and programming and funding for Northern Virginia. Now, when the bill that created us passed, there was an associated referendum to fund us, which failed. So we were created and we had specific things that we had to do under the law. Number one, develop and update the region's long-range transportation plan. And we did not have funding to do so. We also made recommendations on 2 federal funds, the Congestion Mitigation Air Quality Fund, CMAQ, and Regional Surface Transportation Program Fund. So we kind of floated under the radar because we didn't have funding. Great partner with VDOT, who gave us money to do the long-range transportation plan. They literally gave us some planning money, and then we used RSTP funds. And then in 2007, the Virginia General Assembly passed a bill, and I'm just getting to some of the setup to give us some funding. But as part of the creation of the authority, we have 17 members. It is a little nuanced because Northern Virginia is comprised of 9 localities, 5 cities, 4 counties. So that's the 9. The law says the members are the chief elected official from those 9 localities. So every year when localities are doing their board assignments, I know who the members are because the law says it's the mayor or the chair. Now it gets a little interesting. The law currently reads, and I said currently, that the Speaker of the House can appoint 2 members. Those 2 members do not necessarily have to be members of the House. Now there is a bill that's servicing, Bob will know about that because he has that requirement too, that takes us back to the Speaker appointing 2 members of the House. Anyway, we have 2 members that are appointed by the Speaker. We have 1 state senator. We have 2 citizen members appointed by the governor. One of the 2 citizen members appointed by the governor is a member of the Commonwealth Transportation Board. It's the Northern Virginia member of the Commonwealth Transportation Board. And then we have a citizen member appointed by the governor. That position is the only one that has a term. Don't ask me why, where. It has a 4-year term. And that person was reappointed 3.5 years ago. And then we have the chief elected officer, and it says, this is law language, in one town embraced by the authority. What that really means is the mayor of one town in Northern Virginia with a population of 3,500 or more. That is a non-voting position. It is non-voting because citizens of towns can vote on county chairman. So we have the 1 man, 1 vote. So that position doesn't vote. And then our other 2 remaining non-voting positions, the commissioner of highways or his or her designee. Since I've been involved with MBTA, the commissioner of highways has never ever served. It's always been the Northern Virginia district administrator from VDOT. And then we have the head of the Department of Rail and Public Transportation or his or her designee. So those 3 positions do not vote, but the other positions do vote. And again, develop a long-range transportation plan for Planning District 8 that includes transportation improvements of regional significance and those improvements necessary or incidental to any plans that we put forth or amend. So, created in 2002. In 2007, the General Assembly tried again to give us funding. At that time, it was House Bill 3202, which passed in the General Assembly. At that time, there were 7 taxes and fees that were collected by the Northern Virginia Transportation Authority. It is key that I say that because then I'm gonna tell you what happened here. Those 7 taxes and fees collected by MVTA. So what we did is file a bond validation suit. We filed the bond validation suit to really stave off future legal challenges. We want to know, make sure that the bill that the General Assembly passed has great legal standing. We filed in Fairfax Circuit Court because that's where the authority was housed, and we won in the Circuit Court. A member of the General Assembly at that time sued, and he filed an appeal, and he won. And he won because the judge says, although MBTA is primarily composed of elected officials, they were not elected to collect those taxes and fees. By this time, taxes and fees have been collected. So we had to track people down and refund their money. So that was in 2007. So we kind of floated along until 2013. Now, before I get to this, I'm going to talk about HB 599, which passed in 2012. This is very important because it really shapes everything we do. The General Assembly passed the bill before we had funding in 2012 that says, and before then we did have a hiccup. The Commonwealth at that time, or VDOT, was to evaluate projects in coordination with MBTA for their regional significance and give priority to projects that have the greatest level of congestion reduction relative to cost. Now, VDOT looked at it as an unfunded mandate, but because the law said you have to do it at least every 4 years on a minimum of 25 projects. VDOT didn't have money. They felt it was an unfunded mandate. They worked with us to do it. We didn't have money. So we're like, we'll help you out in any way possible, but we don't have money either. And then came 2013, when the General Assembly passed and then Governor Bob McDonnell signed House Bill 2313. This is the funding structure we have today. So House Bill 2313, instead of 7 taxes and fees, it was 3 taxes and fees that went to Northern Virginia. Now, we were not the only recipient of revenues from House Bill 2313. The Hampton Roads Transportation Accountability Commission, they also received money. Now, I'll tell you on another day, Hampton Roads used to be called Hampton Roads Transportation Authority. That's a conversation for another day. So the Hampton Roads, HR TAC received funding, and we received funding as well. Now, our funding structures are different. We receive sales tax, tax, some people call it recordation tax, and then we receive transient occupancy tax. So when you stay in a hotel in Northern Virginia, we receive a portion of that. Oftentimes people say, you don't get gas tax. Gas tax goes to another entity for them, the Northern Virginia Transportation Commission, for them to disperse to the transit agency. So at that time, that was our 3 revenues. And the difference between HB 3202 and 2313, the Commonwealth collects the money. Now try to sue that. The Commonwealth collects taxes and fees all the time. So they collect the money and they remit it to us. Now, another thing that makes us different from HR TAC, because they do get gas tax, where we do not. Our revenues are split into 2, 70% and 30%. 70% goes to the Authority for Regional Transportation Projects. Now, regional is what we say regional is based on the data. Also, any project we fund, it must be in the region's long-range transportation plan. We call that plan transaction. We update it every 5 years. The current plan was adopted by the authority in December of 2022. But you can imagine everyone trying to get their project in the long-range transportation plan, because legally we cannot fund a project that is not in that plan. Another thing about the 70%, we are prohibited by law from funding maintenance or operation. We can only fund new expansion capital. We cannot fund maintenance or operation.
That's also different to the Central Virginia Transportation Authority, because they can fund operation.
They can fund operation. Now, part of the reason why, because we have the 70-30 split, or at least that's how it was transcribed to me. Now, with the 30% goes back to those 9 localities. It is receipt-based. So you, locality, Alexandria, Fairfax, you receive 30% of what we receive from your locality. But you do not automatically receive that. Those localities do not automatically receive it. The law requires that the 9 localities do a maintenance of effort. That means that they must, on an annual basis, certify to us that they have spent the average annual on transportation that they spent for fiscal years 11, 12, and 13. We have the number, we do a certification process. To date, every locality each year has met that certification process. That makes me happy, because if we do hit a situation where that does not occur, Their 30% goes in the 70% pot, and we don't want that. And I will note, just in October, we celebrated distributing $1 billion in 30% revenues. Huge. And the 30% has a lot more flexibility than we have with the 70%. It can be used in projects in our long-range plan, urban and secondary road construction, capital investments that reduce congestion, and the last bullet, for public transportation purposes. Public transportation purposes doesn't solely mean public transit. It means public transportation purposes. I have some localities using their 30% for metro or transit, some using it to match other transportation projects, and they can hire staff with that 30%.
Just say that last sentence again.
They can hire staff, transportation.
And you just say that specifically to the counties of King George and just say that one more time.
30% can be used to fund new staff, transportation now, not in your other departments.
See, there's the
for
catch.
transportation.
But a transportation plan, are you done?
Yes, you can. Okay, yes. So I talked about the bond validation suit. As part of our bond validation suit, because we filed another one in I guess we did it 2013, the bill passed. The next day after it was signed, we were filing the suit because we wanted to make sure that we didn't run into the hiccup that we ran into in 2007. We won in the circuit court and we won in the appeal. So this, and then we sold bonds. We have a AA+ credit rating from the 3 credit rating entities. We tried to get a AAA. They said, you do not control your revenue stream. The Virginia General Assembly does. And because of that, we could not get a AA+. And I will tell you that came into play because thank you, AAA. That came into play because in 2018, some of our revenues was diverted. And the credit rating agency said, yeah, remember when we told you you revenue, you don't control your revenue stream. So our revenue sources at that time when HB 2313 was passed, like I said, we got 0.7% of the sales tax, 15 cents per $100 valuation for the grantor's tax, and then 2% for the TOT, the transit occupancy tax. Then in 2018, WMATA needed state of good repair money. The region came together and said 500 million annually was the need, and that would help WMATA for their state of good repair. Of the 500 million, 154 million was Virginia's share. 102 of the 154 came from diverting grantor's tax and TOT from MVTA. We have been trying since 2018 to get that 102 million annually back. Today, the balance is 38.5 million, and we probably will not get it back, but I'm glad we were able to recoup some. And I'll speak to that because, number one, not touching sales tax was good for us because we did have to inform the credit rating agencies. They were appreciative that we reached out, but a few of them said, or 2 of the 3 said, yeah, we work on WMATA stuff too, so we knew what was going on. They did not downgrade us because of the strength of the sales tax, but they did inform us that they were changing their matrices, however they do the calculations to get you to your credit rating. So they said, when you come back to the bond market, whenever that is, we will have to have a conversation. And then as part of getting the revenues back, so in 2019, the HB 2718 passed, the I-81 Corridor Improvement Fund was created. And now it's called the Interstate Operations and Enhancement Program. We received 8.4% of the revenues as a part of that program. And then in 2020, as part of the omnibus transportation bill, we were able to get some grantors back. So instead of 15 cents per $100 valuation, we get 10 cents. And then we get 20 million from the state from their general transportation fund. No escalation clauses on that. That's just a flat 20 million. But again, we were able to get some of the funding back. That was important because, and you won't see this in my slides, Smart Scale, everyone knows Smart Scale is how the Commonwealth Fund projects. Northern Virginia didn't do well on Smart Scale this round. And when I say not do well, I think we were second to last.
Yeah.
And then another project was added because one fell off, and that may have put us up to third from last. Second, third, being close to last, that was really a hard pill to swallow. Because what happens is MBTA, which we were created to supplement what the Commonwealth was doing, to be a supplement. HB 2313, and I'm paraphrasing, but it says something to the tune, just because Northern Virginia and Hampton Roads have this money does not absolve the Commonwealth of their transportation funding responsibilities to the region. That is very important because we're not here to do it all. The Commonwealth, one of their jobs is transportation funding throughout the state, but we haven't been doing well. And part of it, and I want to say this so you all can be aware of it. People will say, well, you all have that transportation authority. And I say, and you too can have one. It does come from taxpayers paying money. And that's something that everyone has to realize. So our primary responsibility, as I noted, our long-range transportation plan. And since the adoption of HB 2313, we have done 6-year programs biannually. We are actually working on our 7th 6-year program. To date, we have funded 122 projects totaling $3.1 billion. Big number. We have an investment program. We have been investing well. As all of the localities are going through their budgetary needs, we're going through ours. And I have to tell my board, right now, we're earning 15 times the ask for my operating budget in interest. Yeah, so we try to make sure we are great stewards of that money, but again, putting those funds back into transportation. So we have core values that we work on: enhance mobility, increase accessibility, improve resiliency. Those are our goals. And then our core values: equity, safety, and sustainability. Everything we do, though, we have to be mindful of the legal priority is to give priority to the projects that have the greatest level of congestion reduction relative to cost. Sometimes people don't like that because they hear congestion reduction and they think roads, roads, roads. We are truly multimodal. I tell people the one mode we do not fund is air travel because the law also requires that the funding benefits and the projects benefit primarily Northern Virginians where the taxes and fees are raised. So I'll give you an example. We funded traction power upgrades for Metro. Now you just can't do traction power upgrades in Northern Virginia. That's a system-wide thing. So in order for us to be able to fund a project like that, we need proof that the district in Maryland have their money and they are ready to fund their parts as well. Another thing I will note, we pay on a reimbursement basis. That's probably we have 29 policies. Paying on a reimbursement basis is my favorite. Why? It keeps us responsible for reviewing the invoices because there are triggers in the law if the money is misused, whether it's an accident, whether it's not, there are triggers in the law. So we pay on a reimbursement basis. We have a standard project agreement with every project sponsor. It's a template. It's on our website. They read it, they sign it. We pay within 30 days of signing off on, and that's key, the invoices. Some of the invoices are a little, and we have to talk through that, but we pay on a reimbursement basis. We also have performance measures. Why? Well, that's how we do the quantitative evaluations. Also, our enabling legislation requires for us to have performance measures. That enabling legislation from 2002 says we have to have data-driven process. And then that HB 599 that I told you about that passed in 2012 says we have to use a transportation computer simulated model. So it requires us to model the projects that we're evaluating, and we have a computer simulated model. And we try to make sure that we have weights as well, but our performance measures, our goals, objectives, everything aligns with our core values and goes back to the law. For a 6-year program, and it's interesting because again, we're not the pot of gold at the end of the rainbow, but what happens when projects are not funded via SMART scale, everyone comes to MBTA. What we've done is try to stagger our process a little behind SMART scale because I want to know the projects that are going to receive federal funding. One time initially in our early years, it was too close. And we had the cycles too close, and some projects received both pots of money. We don't want to be in that position because again, we are to supplement, not take over what the Commonwealth does for transportation. We look at things as if this is a continuation project. What that means is it a project we funded previously? And what's the past performance? One of the things we try, and we've been trying, don't ask for money unless you need it. Don't ask for money until you need it. Sitting on money is not a good thing. It's a horrible thing. Sitting on it. We have an annual audit, and what we've done at the end of our audit, you'll see all 122 projects and a corresponding line item that zeroes out. We don't have any unencumbered funds, but people will say you have all of this money if the projects aren't moving. Now, again, things happen. We get it. Governing bodies change because we at the authority, we can implement, we don't at this time. So we depend on the project sponsors to implement. I will note of the $3.1 billion, VDOT is probably implementing $900 million of that. Now, they haven't signed an SPA. The locality has signed an SPA with us, and then they have a separate agreement with VDOT. Then there's something only applicable to Northern Virginia in HB 2313 called long-term benefit. Long-term benefit is the one sentence in the law, and I'm paraphrasing. Over time, each of the 9 localities shall receive their proportional share of the revenues received. We even asked members of the General Assembly who were on the authority at that time, well, what do you mean by that? And they said, well, we can tell you what we don't mean. We do not mean dollar in, dollar out. So in December of 2014, the authority adopted some principles to assess long-term benefit. Their principles said, first of all, 50% project location. So if your project costs $100 million and it's in Fairfax County, 50 million is already attributable to Fairfax County. Then the remaining is based on trip origin and destination. Where are the trips originating from? Where are they going to? And then we said, oh, long-term benefit will be assessed on an outlook basis, meaning 10 years back. How are we looking, when we're looking ahead 10 years back? And then only on completed projects. Well, as staff, we do the long-term benefit assessment every 2 years when we're doing the funding program. Why? We notice not saying anyone has ever done this, but there can be some loopholes using those principles. And the authority purposely didn't adopt policy because they wanted to see how the principles work. But if you do it only on completed projects, you can have a locality well over long-term benefits, but they haven't completed a project. So it doesn't look like they're meeting their long-term benefit requirements. So every 2 years when we're doing the funding program, we do the long-term benefit assessment. That is not something we ask for in the legislation, but it is there and applicable to us. When I mentioned CMAQ and RSTP, because we're non-attainment, we at MBTA, we make a funding recommendation to the Commonwealth Transportation Board on those two categories of federal funds. The key word is recommendation. The CTB can say yes, or they could say no. Some of our additional responsibilities per law: provide general oversight of regional programs that involve mass transit or congestion mitigation, issue bonds or debt in such amounts as it deems appropriate. Again, we've only had one debt issuance, and to be honest, we were told we really have too much money to justify another debt issuance. Even though those funds are assigned to projects, we got to get them moving a bit more. They said you have a lot of money. And then we act as a responsible entity under P3. I know some people say that's a great problem to have, but if the projects aren't moving, and that will get to one of the policies we have. The official name is project appropriation or depropriation. I call it use or lose. Because at some point, you get projects that are holding on for dear life because no one wants to get the money back. I get it. Because a bird in the hand is better than two in the bush. People don't want to get the money back. But when we see your project isn't advancing, and we don't have a justifiable reason as to why, it can cause an issue. So some of our investments, when I say we are multimodal, we truly are. So on the regional revenue fund, the 70% what we control, this is the breakout. Sorry, I'm more in your way on this side. Of what we've allocated to roadway, transportation technology, park and ride lots, transit, bike ped, intersection and interchange. Bob Schneider and OmniRide, we made an investment in their Western maintenance facility. We tried to make sure, number one, that we always achieve geographic balance and modal distribution. So we're not trying to heavily invest in only certain parts of the region while we're ignoring other parts. And I have to give authority credit for that. When they come into the room, they put their regional hats on. They do think about the region first versus their own localities and what is best for Northern Virginia. Under the local distribution fund side, you can see what the localities or how the localities are programming or using their 30%. Transportation technology, roadway, intersection, interchange, bike ped, transit, and other. Other is where that staffing comes in and things of that nature. So again, it's been very, very helpful. I will say initially we have what we have, and we still have the Council of Councils. This was attorneys in some of our localities that volunteered to work for us for free. And it was very, very helpful because when the legislation first passed, we always received a lot of questions about the use of the 30%. Hey, can I do this? Is this in accord with the law? Now that hasn't happened in a few years because I think now all of the questions have been asked, but we did have some volunteer counsel to help us with that. So when I told you we do our funding program biannually, with each funding program, we started doing this about 4 cycles ago. We do an economic impact analysis. And I say 4 cycles ago, I remember exactly when we started doing, when the revenues were diverted to Metro. Because in 2018, when 2 of our 3 revenues went to Metro, we were in the process of doing our inaugural 6-year program. It was an interesting time because the board would ask me, well, how much do you think we will have? I don't know. I mean, at that time, the revisions to the bill were coming in frequently. And I said, I just don't know. I wish I could tell you, but I don't know. And we wanted to make sure we made the case to, you make these transportation infrastructure investments, there's also an impact on the economy. We don't do it in-house because we don't want anyone to say we're cooking books to make it look like we're doing things better than we are in regards to the impact on the economy. So for our 3.1 billion, that's what on the 122 projects, then you see 3 billion in additional and committed investment. So what that means is we try not to be the only funding entity on projects. We like for projects to have varying funding sources when they are being implemented. But that equals to, and that could be smart scale, federal, local funds, $6.1 billion. That $6.1 billion gives the region 400 million hours of travel time savings by 2035. 400 million hours. And then we get 190% return on the taxes. And that's partially because 42,000 new jobs are created. And those are the jobs that stay. Those are not the jobs that come in, they live other places outside of the region, and when the job is finished, they go home. These are the jobs they stay. But these investments mean more economic activity, which means more sales tax, more grand tourist tax, more funding for us to keep this cycle going and keep the economy moving as well. So some of our investments, I said this the other day when I was speaking at an event, it is rare to find a major project in Northern Virginia that we are not a part of in some shape, form, or fashion, either with the 70% or with the 30%. With the Route 1 widening, Route 28, we even fund the W&OD trail. And let me tell you, I have to credit the General Assembly, because when we were young in HB 2313, I would get a lot of questions about, you funded a bus stop? How does that reduce congestion? So then we had to get into the explanation, a trail, but people don't commute on trail. In Northern Virginia, people actually commute on trail, and we had to make the case. And this is the one thing, all projects are evaluated equally. We do not have different evaluation processes or different performance measures based on the mode of the project. All projects are evaluated equally. And when the law says we have to give priority to the projects that have the greatest level of congestion reduction versus cost, priority to, it doesn't mean we select accordingly. We can have a project that provides the greatest level of congestion reduction, but the project is $1 billion. But we do have to document, because the law makes us document why we selected certain projects and not others. Metro, we have over $258 million on Metro rail stations. We have funding on VRE. We have funding on PRTC. For some of our local transit providers, we funded new buses. So we try to make sure that we are funding almost, we even have funding on this Franconia Springfield bypass, which was initially a DRPT project until the Passenger Rail Authority was created and took that project over. And now they no longer need funding because of that great federal funding. What we're working on now, preliminary deployment plan for a regional bus rapid transit system in Northern Virginia. Long title. But what that means, so some of our localities, believe it or not, does not have Metro. Some of our localities want Metro. It is not going to happen in the near future because a myriad of reasons. Part of it is cost. We wanted to look at what could we do to provide high capacity transit options. Not only for the localities that do not have Metro, but Metro is a fixed route system. It cannot run everywhere. So what can we do? We are currently investing in 5 different BRT systems in Northern Virginia alone. Now, of the 5, only one is up and running, and that's the Metro Way in Alexandria. But one you may or may not have heard of, the Richmond Highway Bus Rapid Transit in Fairfax County. I highlight that one because that will be a fixed guideway bus rapid transit system. We have funding on widening Route 1 so the BRT can run in the median. Now, that doesn't mean that the results of this study that every locality will have fixed guideway BRT, because that's expensive. Right of way oftentimes costs more than the construction. But we are looking at a study to not only try to connect to what's planned currently for BRT, but looking at connecting with Montgomery County, what Metro is doing, really trying to make this a regional system. And how can our local transit providers help us with that? Because a lot of our transit providers have express service as well. So we're trying to do this initiative. We should have some preliminary results early spring of next year. We do have a BRT webpage. If you're interested, feel free to check it out, but we are in the early stages. Now, we also have an innovation in transportation. We have a transportation technology strategic plan. We wanted to look at technology because we noticed we were receiving applications for more and more technology projects. Technology, of course, is evolving. Now, one thing we are always mindful of, according to our standard project agreement, projects must reach their useful life. That is very, very important because we have to have a separate conversation. If we pay for a bridge, and what's the life of a bridge, 50 something years, and year 20, you want to do something else, we have to have a conversation, or whoever's here. Probably won't be me, I'll be doing something else. But you have to reach the useful life.
Monica has been 10 years the CEO.
I've been 10 years.
So he's not leaving suddenly.
No, but with transportation technology, we have a transportation technology committee. Dr. Snyder's on that committee. We have private sector, public sector, looking at what we can do to integrate transportation technology into a lot of our infrastructure work. And when people say, oh, EVs, that too. I will say at our last transportation committee meeting, we had the FBI talk to us about cybersecurity, because that's one question I always get asked about. People want to know if they're going electric or doing certain things. And it's not only EVs, people are concerned about hacking, where you see the network, where the signalization and things like that. So we did have those conversations, but it is evolving. Lastly, and Ian knows about this because he's a part of this, the regional multimodal mobility program called ARM3P. We're working with DRPT, VDOT, FAMPO on really looking at what we can do to get people out of their single occupancy vehicles. What can we do? How can we incentivize? And then we do a roundtable each year with ITS on transportation technology topics or transportation technology. What are the new and current topics that we are dealing with? And then we do lunch and learn. This is the slide that shows the partners throughout the region, whether they are localities or regional agencies. And we have everyone here. We try to make sure, look, we had to view this slide a lot of time to make sure we're not leaving anyone off. And then what I wanted to highlight, we have a project dashboard. It's the novagateway.org. You can go to this dashboard and pull up any information. Well, let me quantify information on the 122 projects that we are funding by funding sources. So whether or not the authority has funding on it, you will see that, but you will see the other funding sources as well. Project sponsor, location, mode, and corridor segment. That gateway is a live document. So I know that was a lot.
Thank you.
But we try to emphasize partnerships. That's very, very important.
Yeah, and just that. Yeah. Yes, Jason.
All right. First off, thank you so much for being here. Love the presentation. Tons of great information. I'd love to talk to you a little bit more about the regionalism aspect.
Yeah.
And you had a slide in there about the locality balance as well as the modality balance, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the locality balance, how do you do that? Because I think one of the questions that we've had here is making sure that every locality is involved and that they feel that they are getting their money's worth, from this, because we've got some very large imbalances of population, among the localities.
So that's a great question. I will tell you, one of the projects we funded was for the smallest town in Northern Virginia. I don't know if you've heard of it, town of Hillsborough. And I jokingly said, oh, I have a population. And I was talking to one of the authority members. I was like, they have a population of 115. He said, oh, they've grown. But I mentioned Hillsborough because we couldn't enter into an agreement with Hillsborough. They couldn't apply. but Loudoun County could. And the chair of my board is the chair of Loudoun County. And I said, this is where the collaboration and these conversations, big versus small, you have to talk to each other. Because when we see it, we see the projects coming in. We have seen projects that stop at county or city lines. And we want to make sure that the other or adjoining entities or locality is aware of the project. Now we've gotten to a point that that coordination happens on the front end. But the other reason why it's important, when I talked about long-term benefits, one thing I didn't mention, the towns, there are 5 in Northern Virginia with a population of 3,500 or more. They have to get their share of the 30%, which is great. However, the law doesn't acknowledge the town when it comes to the maintenance of effort. So what that means is, if a town submits a project, and I'll pick on Leesburg because they are one of the they're larger than some of our voting members, 50% of long-term benefit goes to Loudoun County automatically. Leesburg isn't assessed long-term benefit. Only those 9-member jurisdictions are. And this is what I mean about coordination. And we have these conversations. Does Chair Randall know? Because the last thing someone wants to know, especially when you have voting members, for them to be blindsided. But we have reached a point that we've hit that. The other thing I will say, we have 2 statutory committees and 3 standing committees. So the standing committees we have governance and personnel, finance, and planning and programming. These committees have 5 authority members on each of them. Now, of course, there are committees open to the public, open to other authority members, anyone can come. But this is where the sausage making happens. We make the recommendations, we talk things out. If there are concerns about projects and things of that nature, we talk it out. And what we've done as a staff, the final recommendation doesn't come from staff. Like staff make the recommendations to the committee. The final recommendation comes from the planning and programming committee.
Mhm.
So you have authority members that are making recommendation on the 6-year program and the long-range transportation plan.
Okay.
Those 2 statutory committees that we have, the technical advisory committee. It is a committee of 9, the law says 9. 3 of the 9 are appointed by the Secretary of Transportation. The other 6 are appointed by localities embraced by the authority. I love the legal language. And then we have a planning, and that committee are citizen experts. Citizen experts from around the region, engineers, transportation professionals who come and they weigh in and they give their own report to the authority and to the committee. I make sure that the chair is giving the report because again, I don't want to be accused of trying to swing the pendulum anyway. The other statutory committee is the Planning Coordination Advisory Committee, long name. Essentially, that is a committee of 14 elected officials who are not on the authority. So it's the 9 localities, the 5 cities, 4 counties, and then the 5 towns with a population of 3,500 or more. But they cannot be the same members who are on the authority. I know that was a long answer.
Yeah, can I just
Yeah, sure.
So no, I do appreciate that. And then somewhat related to that, has there ever been a study done about what would happen if NVTA had not been formed and those projects had not happened?
So it's interesting you say that because while we're keeping track of what's going on, of course, with NVTA funding, we're also tracking SMART funding and other federal grants that the region has been awarded, or even the ones we endorse. I will say, and I don't know if this helps or hurts, we are pacing rapidly to the point to Transform 66 outside the Beltway. I'll give you that example. Aubrey Lane was Secretary of Transportation. Secretary Lane at the time came to us asking, will we partner with the Commonwealth to help see that project come to fruition? Because at that time, the public contribution or the public need was $600 million. And they asked NVTA for half. So I think it speaks to the partnership. And if the Commonwealth didn't have it, can you imagine the projects that would not have been funded. Well, we always say, because someone asked at a public hearing, well, when will you say your job is done? Yeah, we did get that question. We had a huge backlog. Our long range plan, if we were to implement, I think it's 400 and some odd 475, the cost, $76 billion.
Mhm.
And that's only capital. That does not take into account operating. And then what do you know? Every time you adopt a long range plan, then as soon as you adopt, there's a project someone hadn't thought about.
Yes.
Hey, have you thought about, so it's always ongoing, but I will tell you, we have, just looking at some of the Metro Rail station, Potomac Yard, Innovation, where we have huge numbers, and even the Richmond Highway BRT, we have 300 million alone on the BRT component. We have more money on bus rapid transit in Northern Virginia than the Commonwealth has on BRT. So I will say a lot of projects would not have happened or have taken much longer to
Yeah.
implement.
Right. I've got like 16 other questions, but I'll let.
We'll let Dr. Young with her question, then you have a question, right?
Yes, I do. Thank you. I was looking for the 9 jurisdictions, and I'm assuming that these are them.
Yes, but you can also see in the front of, this is our 2023 annual report.
And I was
So,
looking for the 4 towns. Can you name those?
sure, and it's 5 towns with a
Five
population
towns.
3,500 or more. Town of Percival, town of Leesburg, town of Herndon, town of Vienna, and the town of Dumfries. So it's really 2 in Fairfax County, 2 in Loudoun County, and 1 in Prince William County.
So my follow-up question was with that was, did you add those, or were they always part of it? And have you added any since that are outside of
That's a
that
great question.
planning district?
No, that was written into the law, and it specifically said, towns with a population of 3,500 or more. Because we have a lot of towns in Northern Virginia, but those are the 5 towns that have a population of 3,500 or more. None has been added since HB 2313. They could be, if we had a town that started, the population is increasing and it hits 3,500, we'll know from census numbers, then we could add. But we have not added, and that was always it was actually in the enabling legislation about having a town member, and then in the funding bill, that those 5 towns with a population of 3,500 or more get their share of the 30%, and their share is based on school age population.
And the only reason, I'm sorry, these are just related questions that I've had that I wanted to answer, and I just wanted to
Sure.
go to it. If the answers were not what I was thinking, then I wouldn't have the additional question because, and this is not against any other district or county, but we've been fighting for COCA, for example, for several years, and Prince William is right north of us and butts up to us. As a matter of fact, we don't know if we're growing into Prince William or Prince William is growing into us, and Quantico being right in the middle, right next to Dumfries. So my question is, how do we, like, we're right in the middle of this planning district and the northern, we are called Northern Virginia, we get federal funding because we're right next to Prince William, and because of that. So how does that work? Like,
Yeah, that's a good question. So the trigger is Planning District 8. For us, Northern Virginia, Planning District 8. Could Planning District 8 expand? Maybe. But right now, Planning District 8, per the law, is defined as those 5 cities in 4 counties. So, and you're absolutely right, because we talk about this at the Transportation Planning Board, our federally mandated metropolitan planning organization, because I think Fredericksburg was a part, but then there was an agreement, but there was areas south of Prince William at one point that was a part of it, but then they got approval to not be a part of it. But for the purposes of these revenues, it's Planning District 8.
oh, gotcha.
Any other questions that, I know Jason, you had,
Anyone online, maybe?
yeah. And Chris and Meg, do you guys have questions? Okay, then speak now or forever hold your peace, right? Jason, you wanna go?
Thanks so much. Yeah, I could do this all night.
No, we've got other,
No.
we haven't been skiing all week.
Yeah, right. I know. I see, I come back and I'm just full of energy.
Gotta have my hair done just.
So the beginning years, I'm curious, you know, when you said you didn't have any money and VDOT gave you money, I mean, so if, you know, if this region were to move forward with a regional transportation authority, is the idea or the prediction that might find ourselves in a similar boat and we would maybe need to find a bridge until that happened? Or at this point, have all the lessons been learned from NVTA, Hampton Roads, and now Central Virginia? And we might be able to skip some of those growing pains.
You know, I hope you can skip some of the growing. When I say VDOT gave us funding, because again, it was like some planning grants of things of that nature. But when the law passed and the Commonwealth was collecting money, they didn't remit it to us because they knew we had filed the bond validation due. But then they said, well, okay, we're gonna give it to you, but we give it to you and you spend it, you're gonna have to give it back. So we said, no, let's just wait and see the outcome of this bond validation suit. Now, here's some of the lessons learned. I have 3 budgets. The 70% budget, which we call the regional revenue fund, the 30% local distribution, which is easy, whatever we receive, that's what each locality get, then my operating budget. Now, here is something we did took from Hampton Roads. We can pay our operating budget out of the 70%. Every year, we go to the authority. Do you want to do that? Initially, we did not. You either had to pay as one of the members out of your 30%, or give us a check from some other fund, your general operating monies or what have you. And it was a challenge because some localities looked at it where every dollar you get from your operating budget is a dollar I don't get for my 30%. And I had noticed that Hampton Roads had received or had a bill that said they could pay their needs, their operating needs out of their fund. And so we had a bill that passed and had the same language. And it has worked out well. Now, we don't assume that's what the authority wants to do. Every year we ask. But I was saying to someone earlier, my operating budget right now is a fraction of what we earn on interest.
Okay.
A fraction.
Okay.
So if you were to do this, I would highly recommend having an investment in debt manager.
Okay.
Because we invest that money and we've done well. But every year as you grow, because you do have some growing pains and some learning pains. I think initially the authority said, oh, the staff should be small. I have a staff of 7 people. That is small. And every 2 years when we're doing these funding programs and we have to follow the project, they grow. And then we take on more of our requirements or responsibilities under the law. So what I would say is you have to be intentional. When in 2007, when the funding bill died, and then when it came back in 2013, we received a call, it was an early session, how much do you need? And I'm like, oh my God, what do I say? You know, I said we had just adopted the long range transportation plan, and at that time the need was 27 billion over the next 25 years. But what I said was, we know they have the appetite for 300 million because that was the target number in 2007. So we said, let's try to ask for 300 million. Now I will say, and it's just strange, when COVID hit and we were actually doing a funding program and we didn't know if we should, hey, just press pause, sales tax started coming in every which way. It was unbelievable, as did grantor. People were buying, there were bidding wars. So while we thought, hey, you know, we may have to kind of string some projects out, it created a lot of cash for us. Now, on the flip side, we estimate conservatively. purposefully, because what I cannot go to the authority and say, we don't have enough money to fund a project that we committed to fund.
Anybody else? Have questions?
Follow-up question on that. The bill that came after the fact to allow, the funding from the 70% for the operating expenses, is that something, was that adjusting something in the original bill, or was it
Great
separate,
question.
or so can be done together up front?
So that
If
was
we're interested.
actually. On the wrong way. That, no, I don't have it up here. So I had one of my authority members who was a state senator at the time, and it was actually a part of the HB 599. I don't know this bill.
Okay.
Because this bill, because we didn't have funding when it was adopted, said VDOT had to do these things. But the authority, it said VDOT shall evaluate all significant transportation and projects, et cetera, for planning District 8. But again, it was unfunded. We wanted the ability to do it because VDOT said, we don't have any money to keep doing this. And she said, I'm gonna do it every 4 years on 25 projects. And I said, I can't populate a funding program every 4 years on 25 projects. So we had changes in this particular bill and our enabling, oh, not enabling, but the funding bill as
Okay.
well.
And Bobby, you had,
Just listening to the conversations that these elected leaders have had, fortunately not electeds, God bless you all. One of the values that I've observed is some of the jurisdictions who maybe were bothered by having to pay in 20 years ago,
Mhm.
are now very happy about some of the
Extremely.
projects. Can you discuss how projects in maybe location X benefits Y, and not just in the transit mode, because we tend to think, oh, that's a metro station or a
Yeah.
PRE,
That's the
but in terms of roads and bridges, some
Yeah.
of those nuts and bolts things that affect this region.
So let me tell you, one of the things that, at least with Northern Virginia, everyone is an advocate for something. But we advocate for almost. So I will tell you, one day, and this is my own personal story, I had a meeting in the District of Columbia at 9 a.m. And I'm like, okay, I'll leave at 6 something in the morning. I'll be good, right? Wrong, because little did I know, and it was one day I was like, oh, if I leave 6 something, traffic won't be an issue. Where there had been a fatality on I-66 at 3 something in the morning. And that fatality was, I live in Prince William County. It was miles away from my house. By 9 a.m., I was still sitting on I-66. And the incident did not occur on 66 in Prince William. It wasn't even 66 in Fairfax. But because there was an incident, it impacted my commute. So what Dr. Snyder was talking about, an improvement in Arlington, widening the facility, and I love giving the express lanes example, even though we ultimately didn't partner with the Commonwealth because they didn't require any public funds. But that's a great example because you provide more modal options. So if I am trying to get to DC or wherever it is in the wee hours of the morning, when a lot of people, especially pre-COVID, I have modal options. And this is what the authority likes. You have people from I wish I would have had a trip origin destination map as part of our long range plan update, is looking at where people are originating from and where they're going to. And it shows really the value of making these investments all across the region, because we live in a place, everyone that lives in Prince William does not work in Prince William. And I guess that's the same for you. You have people who live here that work other places, and you want to make sure that you're still attractive and being responsive to your citizens. So Bob is right. Initially, it was like, oh, we don't know. But now it's like, yes, and how can we do more? How can we do more? How can we make sure that not only the General Assembly, but others know the value of not only regionally collaborating, but making sure this funding structure stays intact?
Okay, and Kathy, you have a question, and then we'll wrap that up, because we want to be respectful of your time and everything coming down.
I'm gonna be the controversial one because we're a locality that's not on this. So how does it benefit a locality that is much smaller and whose citizenry don't want any more taxes and do not see how this in any way benefits them?
So it's interesting you say that. One of my smaller localities, one is 2 square miles. And the other, I'm trying to, do you recall the population of Manassas Park?
42, well, that's Manassas City.
I wanna say, I think they're around 22,000.
So when we get to benefits, they're getting far more investments than we are receiving from those localities. And we don't look at it, oh, well, you know, we've only gotten 200,000 from you, so you gotta give us a project that costs 200,000, because it's about a connected region. So while your taxpayers may not think they're getting the benefit, when they don't have to wait in traffic because there's an improved facility, that is a benefit, whether they are taking it or not. And usually people are taking it. So it's about the cost savings, where, and my board chair likes to say the quality of life. When you're not sitting in traffic, you are able to do other things with your time. We have people that have missed, and because we get those calls and I have to divert them to other places. Well, I wasn't able to make it to my kid's basketball game because of traffic. Do something about it. That affects everyone. Or I wasn't able to make it to my doctor's appointment on time. And I have a personal story sitting on a facility. I won't say anything. And lo and behold, my husband's stuck on the same facility. And let me tell you who does not care about your plight: daycare providers. They do not care about your plight. You have to be there on time. And I'm stressed calling my emergency contact. So when you make these investments, especially, and not only the what you see physical, but even these signs, the signage, the technology, they'll give you an alternate route. Hey, there's an incident coming up 5 miles ahead. You may need to get off now. That is the benefit, because sometimes people don't know they need it until they need it. People look at, oh, taxes, and I don't want to pay this. One thing, especially when we started collecting, or when the Commonwealth started collecting those taxes, we thought we were going to hear complaints. What we heard is, what is taking so long? What is taking so long? That's really what we heard. So I will say, even though you're small, your citizens will get a benefit. And what some of my smallest localities, they are probably getting some of the most out of the authority.
Okay, so as we're talking, we have more questions. I apologize.
Okay.
Have Pam do that, and then Drew, and then Sally do it.
Drew didn't have a question. He didn't ask a question. Let him go first.
Okay,
It's kind of piggybacks off of what you're saying. I mean, thank you very much for the presentation. And it makes a ton of sense based on having lived up in Springfield for a while, the past 10 years. But I'm looking at the map, and short math, 2.6, 2.7 million people essentially in the region, I'm guessing.
2.1.
Okay, I was just going off of a different,
That's okay.
we're all the cities as well?
Yeah, that's combined.
Okay, this might be older data or something. Anyway, I can kind of see how it would work, but trying to find, like, who would be someone that Spotsylvania County would talk to when we're not in that same kind of situation. Right? Who would I go and say, hey, I'd like to learn lessons learned from you, when we're on the fringes of not even being in the same kind of situation. So
You mean from the elected official standpoint?
well, that goes into a second question. You mentioned on one of the boards that there were 3 appointees. I'm wondering who are appointed that are voting members that aren't elected officials. Because that kind of, that's concerning to us as if we're going to join something like that, that three non-elected official members could vote and then partner with someone else and then pull a fiat.
Right. So I have, out of the 17 members, the 3 that are non-voting is the Commissioner of Highways, the head of the Department of Rail and Public Transportation, and the mayor of one of the towns with a population of 3,500 or more. And that's just because their citizens vote for the county chair. So we try to make sure there's one man, one vote. But getting to the other membership composition, the rest, 14 are voting members.
Are they all citizens or elect, or any of them?
All except the 2 citizen members appointed by the governor.
So there isn't like a VDOT voting member?
No,
or-
so the
okay.
VDOT person cannot vote.
Okay.
The DRPT person cannot vote.
So 2 out of 14,
3,
3 out of 14.
3 out of 14,
Okay.
because that mayor, who is an elected official from the town, cannot vote. But one thing we always say, and I would, if you have questions about this, please contact Mayor Derek Wood, Town of Dumfries. You can have influence without having a vote. The town of Dumfries, I don't even, at least population of 3,500, that much I know, received from MBTA $65 million for Route 1. The town cannot raise that kind of money. The town of Dumfries cannot raise 65 million. This gets to getting benefits. And we will not, I shouldn't say never, we are not going to collect $65 million from the town of Dumfries. But they're getting that investment. This is like the town of Hillsborough, population 115. I think their project was 9 million. Now people are, oh, that's only 9 million. For a population size of 115, $9 million is a whole lot of money. But that gets to what you're getting. And I will tell you, public comment means the world to the authority. Pre-COVID, because now people like to give testimony remotely. The town, when we were doing our funding program, considering the town of Hillsborough project, literally, I think they brought 80% of the town to the public hearing. We were there for 3 hours listening to public testimony. So getting to your question, and again, with the non-voting, the 2 citizen members, one is a member of the Commonwealth Transportation Board. So we want that person to be engaged because she and the current members, Mary Hines, she's voting on our projects down in Richmond at the CTV level.
Okay, Sully, go ahead.
Okay, thank you for coming out tonight. I really appreciate your time. I'm with Kathy, we're both in King George. This is more of a rebuttal than a question, I would say. The examples you provided are excellent, but I would push back and say that they're also in the heart of where the funding would be needed. We're on the edge, King George, we're on the edge of the planning district. We don't have an interstate coming through the county. We've got 27,000 people. Most of them work in the county or very close to the county. We do have people that, get on 95 and make the, God bless them, crazy. But, but the voters don't see any benefit for the most part for us.
What I will say, we have a locality that does not have an interstate, Loudoun County. No interstate in Loudoun County. Now they do have metro, but you know what? They need roadway. They need facilities, bike pedestrian facilities. They need technology improvement. They need transit investment because at the end of the day, while people may not want it, people are commuting. And at some point, it starts to zero out.
So did they get to tap into that 70%?
Oh, absolutely. The chair of my board is the chair of Loudoun County. You best believe they tap into the 70%.
That's the concern that most of our voters have.
I-
They think that money's gonna go to Northern Virginia, we'll never see it again.
No, because for us, and this is why the law is specific, the taxes and fees are primarily raised in Northern Virginia. So if you had a transportation authority, the taxes and fees would primarily be raised in your locality. The law can be written where it must benefit your region. That's how our law is written. It must benefit the region. And that's why I gave the example about the Metro Traction Power upgrade. We couldn't fund that if just entirely. DC and Maryland had to show their share as well, or we were legally prohibited from doing it. So it must benefit where the place or the region where the taxes and fees are raised.
And we have a question here.
Yes.
Yeah, so this is not my personal opinion,
Mhm.
just so you know. I was just going back to Northern Virginia's heavy hitters in terms of taxes. And people are moving down here because they don't want to pay those taxes. They still work up there, but they come down here to live. So not to pay those taxes. So with this, that means that we're raising taxes somewhere to, to accommodate this.
Mhm.
So when that was just a comment, but when you talked about smart scale,
Mhm.
that this is to supplement smart scale. We live off of smart scale, and we're fighting for $6 million. And I understand there's a lot of money on the screen, but it has to go to a lot of projects. And you have a lot of members that seems to have to vote. And to me, it's always, even though you're talking about these towns are gonna get, like, I know the mayor I had lunch with him the other day. You still have to fight in a way to vote to get these things, and it would be frustrating, probably in the beginning years until, it works itself out. But I just see this as a complex that needs to be ironed out and in detail before even getting to that, to a point where everybody's gonna be satisfied from what
Well,
I'm hearing.
you know what they say about consensus and getting a good deal. Two things I will say regarding the taxes and people moving here but working in Northern Virginia, you're still stuck in that traffic. You are still stuck in that traffic where you may think, oh, I'm getting a better deal on housing.
Yeah, they're just making a choice.
Yeah, it's just making a choice. But to talk about the collaboration, I'll call it the collaboration. And this is why, and this is just my opinion and mine alone, the law says who the membership are. When they come in that room to make decisions, now I will tell you, staff, we do our best to do the behind the scenes. We work behind the scenes. I need to know the trigger point. And this is why and I think this is why long-term benefits is put in. Because we can't have Fairfax County having all the money and Arlington having none of the money. We can't have that, and we don't work that way. This is why we as staff do the long-term benefits every time we do a funding program every 2 years, so everyone can see where they are. What helps is having strong leaders, not strong opinions, but strong leaders who come to the table and say, okay, we do not want this to go away. Because if this goes away, then we are solely reliant on either the Commonwealth and or federal money. And the Commonwealth, they don't have a pot of gold at the end of the rainbow either. And while at one time everyone was earmarking, and now we have smart scale that's supposed to be performance driven, it's never enough. So when you have limited resources and you have something that is working, now is it 100% everyone loves? Because the funding program we're working on now, 24 projects totaling $947 million. We don't have $947 million, but we have these conversations. What do you need now? What's most important? And we walk through it. But I will say on elected officials, because that's as a staff, on the elected official side, you have to have strong leaders to say, we cannot afford to mess this up. Because if we mess it up and it goes away, what are we left with? We have and we've been in this for 10 years for Northern Virginia, and we still have a backlog of investments. 10 years later, even though we have 122 projects, $3.1 billion, we still have a backlog that we're trying to address. And I would say if your membership, and I know it could be hard because no one wants to be the one that's saying, I voted to give up my money for a project somewhere else. But then when you're thinking bigger picture, what does it mean for the viability of your region? And at the end of the day, can everyone say, you know what, this is best for the region? And I think, that's something your leaders would have to ask themselves.
And I think, to the challenges right now for a lot of, Northern Virginia, you have such a mass amount of people, and we're very small compared to Northern Virginia. And our culture here is very different than Northern Virginia, you know, and you guys are looking at the 1% for schools for your sales tax, right? So, oh, no, you're 1%
Yeah.
to be able to assess 1% on the sales tax for
Correct.
school construction.
Correct, and we also
Um,
have a.
And you have the fire levy. So it's like all of these things just tick, 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 and pretty soon people feel like they're being nickel and dimed. And, our citizens, I'm just gonna speak for my citizens, are very, we advertised a tax rate, and I've been getting emails now,
Mhm.
just on an advertised rate. Don't even talk about the fact, we haven't even discussed it yet. And, so this is very sensitive for a lot of us. I'd be curious how many people are still in office that were in when
One of my members said, to do this job, you have to be willing to lose your seat.
Yep, you do.
Actually, Jerry's still there.
She's like, to do this job, you have, and do it well, you have to be, and not only being on MBTA, but being in your elected position, you have to be willing to lose your
Yep.
seat. Now, I had a few retire. They're like, thank you, I've done my service, and a few have lost them. Okay, yes. But they've said I would do it again. We had a member of the General Assembly that lost his seat for voting for HB 2313. Joe May, remember? He voted for it, and they were like, no, you did not vote for taxes.
Well, I hope that we'd all have the mindset that we do the right things and don't do things for self-preservation. But, sometimes that's not the.
I do not envy, I do not envy you all, because I'm just in the transportation space. You have a whole plethora of other things that you have to think about. But what I would say, we don't like increased taxes in Northern Virginia either.
Right.
We do not like it, but we hate being stuck, to the point that now we have companies that would have come to the region. They're not coming. Their people can't get
Right.
from work, then it's a problem.
Well, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We really appreciate it.
Hey, Ian. Thank you. Thank you. Can we keep these?
Yeah,
then?
oh,
So-
yeah, please.
Okay, just in
Please.
case anybody needs
Yeah.
them, we'll have extra copies.
Thank you.
Okay, Ian.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We don't want to give you any midnight mass, so we're gonna plow through the items here as quickly as possible. I think those were important questions that you all wanted to ask, so we didn't stop you. The chair didn't stop you, but I'm gonna try and plow on now because I know you all have dinner and families and all sorts. Can you click on the number 4, please?
I'm bedtime.
Yep. The questions we were asked last month
Can stay up.
It's bedtime.
are, please extend an invitation to Ms. Backman to discuss the MBTA. You've just had that. We did that. The next one, what is the cost of the 3 I-95 bridges that were just completed? We got that in the pack for you under item 5A. Please present the breakdown of funds from Central Virginia Transportation Authority. That's a completely different authority in Richmond. And Connor, who's there at the computer, spent a whole month finding out those answers for you and did a great job, if I may say so, together with colleagues. Then how do other RTAs calculate their funding splits between regional projects, local allocations, transit, and so on? John spent the month finding those answers for you, and it's in the pack, and we'll go through those now. So Connor, if you can move to the next presentation. Those are the answers we were asked, and we try to give you the answers. First of all, the cost for the bridges. I think this was asked from Spotsylvania. Next slides, Connor. So the first 2 were main bridges that cross the Rappahannock River on the I-95, right? The 2 new bridges, they're 3 lanes each, if I remember correctly, and they've just been opened. You can see the northbound one cost 127 million, including the road surfacing and so on. The southbound one, 116 million. The bottom project is meant to be the bridge over the US 17, and we've had some back and forth with VDOT over this project and the cost estimate. It's there for you at 107 million, but that project is more complicated to find out the cost because it was a design build contract, which is a little different to the other two. And so there are other costs involved in that project. So it's the bridge and some of the other works around the bridge and the design costs and all that. So it's a bundled cost. So that one is more complicated I can't always unscramble the egg for you because I get that's what the total cost is, but then some of that wasn't actually to physically build the bridge, right? So that last item, just treat that number with a little bit of, it's a design build contract that had some other elements, but basically the price I was given is 107 million from VDOT with some, so there's lots of caveats in that last number. Okay, so that answers that question. Connor, next one. So this one Connor did, and I'm going to let him explain it. We found the answer that you were looking for last month. Hard to find, but Connor found it. So well done to Connor. If you can.
One of the questions was the splits for the jurisdictions. So I'm just going to do a quick analysis of the revenues and distribution of the CBTA. So the CBTA is Richmond's Transportation Authority. It was established in 2020 and comprises all jurisdictions, including District 15. It administers two taxes. There's a regional sales tax and there is a gas tax. The gas tax is indexed for inflation. So here we have the FY23 tax collections. You see that generally the sales and use tax is going to bring in about $13 million a month. And the local fuels tax will bring in around $4 to $4.5 million a month. So the year-to-date numbers are $159 million for the sales tax and $51 million for the local fuels tax. And then the total received taxes was $211 million for the year. The sales and use tax for CBTA is 0.7%. And the local fuels tax is 7.6 cents per gallon of gasoline, 7.7 for diesel fuel. And like we said, the rate from inflation rate is determined annually by the Commissioner of Revenue based on the Consumer Price Index from the Bureau of Labor Statistics. So METC, which is what Monica had talked about earlier, is the Northern Virginia Transportation Commission, not the same as META. And that reports the wholesale fuel tax of 8.7 cents per gallon of gasoline and 8.8 cents per gallon of diesel fuel.
Just the clarification you need there is that the state used to have the additional fuels tax on the retail price, and it was a number of cents like that. It is now shifted tax on the.
It's still there, and in addition, they also have a local fuels tax. In addition, they also have on your car registration, depending on the energy of the vehicle. And in addition,
Don't do that. You're just muddying the water.
I spent a lot of time on that.
We understand that.
Okay, carry on.
So those are the tax collections for FY23. And look at the transfers. So the operating fund is paying for like the salaries, etc. People who do work for the CTA, maybe like the executive director. And then the regional fund, that's the pot. So the regional fund is 35% of the funds collected. That's used to maintain a working capital reserve, fund the cost of issuance and other debt-related fees, and then fund pays for the projects and studies undertaken by the CBTA. Then you see below the regional fund is payments to GRTC. This is 15% of the fund brought in. The bill that was signed in 2020 requires a local maintenance effort for transit funding. So GRTC is, the Greater Richmond Transit Commission. So you see that monthly they'll transfer around, between $5 and $7 million to the regional fund, and then 2.5 to GRTC. So the total transfers was 105 million for fiscal year 23. Here we have the local distributions. I
Do you-
think
do you
a
want-
lot of people.
I just want to mention one thing, for example, on the ride through the jurisdictions, funding through the motor fuels tax, we are projected to bring in as much in 2030 as we did in 2012, despite the fact we're indexed for inflation. So just keep in mind that that number for them is probably going to be as good as it gets, even though inflation, because as the number of gallons pumped statewide goes down, inflation will just keep it. That's just something to recognize as you're looking at this number.
Drew, did you have sorry to interrupt, Connor, did you have a question? Just.
I'm just
ask
trying to get a feel for scale of the population, generally speaking, in that.
It's coming.
It's coming. Okay,
Okay.
that's what I was getting. Very wide.
So here we have the local distributions, again, for FY 23. Town of Ashland, Charles City County, Chesterfield County, Goochland County, Hanover County, Brevard County, Kent, Bowden, and Michigan, Richmond. So the total local distributions matches the 50% of what's sent to GRTC and the regional fund is 105 million for the year. So the important thing to note, which you'll find in the policies and procedures, is that the authority distributes local funds to jurisdictions based on the proportionate share of each jurisdiction's sales and gas tax each month.
That's what we couldn't answer for you last month. But we found the answer. So it's not by population.
Yeah.
It's by the sale and gas revenue that comes in.
And so you'll see good.
For the local share, right?
Yes.
So the regional part will still build projects in your localities, but for the local share, it's distributed based on the revenue income from your locality. It goes back to you.
Correct.
So every member of that regional agrees to charge 7.6 cents per gallon.
So what, yes.
Well, it's done, so
Or collect
the way you use those words are just, I've got to be careful about saying yes. The state of Virginia implements this legislation. And the state of Virginia collects those taxes, not the individual locality. The locality doesn't go running around trying to collect, no. The state levies the tax and the state collects it. The state of
Right, I understand that, but there's an agreement with the state that all those members and transportation, all fuel sold, the state will collect 7.6 cents per gallon for diesel and et cetera. That's all I wanted to know.
It would be, isn't that equal, similar to what we could do for VRE, right? Where we have entered into a VRE agreement.
It's called a commuter rail gas tax, and in Richmond and in fact, anywhere where you do not have either VRE or Metro Rail in the state, you're still paying the gas tax as if you had. So this is a thing that I don't think residents in some of our rural counties know. Whether or not you have VRE, you're still paying the gas tax that funds that, except it doesn't go to VRE, right? Because what the state did, which is what I was trying to say just now, is that the state moved from the gas tax being on the retail sales of gas tax, it moved the commuter rail gas tax to the wholesale price, not the retail price. And it extended it to every county and city in the state of Virginia. So you're already paying it. You're already paying it. Whether you're in King George County or whether you're in Spotsylvania County that has got VRE, you're still paying it because the state has already extended that tax to every jurisdiction. But because in Richmond, they have a transportation authority, they're getting some of that gas tax back. Whereas in, say, King George County, you're not. It's going into the smart scale pot. So you're not actually, you're paying it. You don't know this, perhaps, but when you go full up with gas, you're already paying that gas tax. It's just that because we don't have a transportation authority, you can't get any of it. It goes into the smart scale pot. In Spotsylvania, the City of Fredericksburg and Stafford, it gets not into the smart scale pot, it goes to pay VRE to operate, right? So there's this weird thing, which is a truth in our region. That is that it is theoretically possible that if you have a transportation authority here, the gas tax that is paid in the two rural counties, Caroline and King George, who do not participate in the transit, what's the thing called that funds VRE?
PRTC.
No, the mechanism to participate in transit that fund,
They have a dedicated master agreement.
yeah, so because the tax is collected already in Caroline and King George, some of that could be brought back to the region or back to Caroline and King George. If you have a transportation authority, you can't do it if you don't have a transportation authority, because the state then collects it and puts it in things like smart scale. So it's the only mechanism that you can get any of that back. You won't, in the case of the localities that have VRE, they really have a deal as to
Right.
how to use that money. But there's no deal in Caroline and King George, so it gets put into smart scale
So
currently.
Ian, let me ask you this. So what you're saying is that King George and Caroline could claw back
Some of the money.
some of the money to put it in this pot. We could not we could not get it because it's already earmarked for VRE. So what we would have to do is, in effect, all localities would have to, I thought we decided we weren't doing a gas tax because it would be too much. But if we did,
You can.
if we did a gas tax, then it would inflate everybody to the same amount to some degree, right?
So right now, the gas tax is identical across the whole of Virginia, right now. So you can put a small gas tax on top of that should you wish. But the gas tax that is already paid, you are allocating a portion of it to VRE and you get a little something at the end of it. Caroline and King George don't.
Right.
The money that is gas tax right now, that is paid right now in Caroline and King George, is collected by the state on the wholesale gas price, and it's paid mostly into the smart scale pot. But it doesn't necessarily come back to King George and Caroline unless, the only unless is if you have a successful smart scale project, you then get some of that gas tax back. If you don't, the gas tax is gone from your county permanently. It's gone.
Gotcha, but as you said, it's possible, it's not a shall.
Right.
What
It's possible, not a shall.
What is possible?
That if we were part of this, we possibly could have back, but
No, you can get it back. Richmond, right now.
well, I would have to have it as a shall, not a
Oh,
possible.
no, okay, there's no way in which you're gonna get 100%.
No, any part back, because they could decide to no, you don't get it back.
Well, so hang on, let's just be honest here. Right there in front of you is the Central Virginia Transportation Authority, who right now is getting their gas tax back.
Right, but that's them, not us.
Yes, so anything that the state of Virginia General Assembly decides to do can do anything they want. They can raise another tax in your county and spend it on the beach in Virginia, right? We have no control over them. However, what you here have at least is an actual case where they're actually getting it back, and this General Assembly voted to do exactly this. However, they can vote tomorrow to introduce a regional transportation authority without us, right? The only reason we're having this discussion is because we managed to convince them to stop, to give us a chance to talk about this. However, it would be really daft if they're doing this for Central Virginia and they come and institute transportation authority here and they deny Caroline and King George the opportunity to get back the gas tax. That would be weird. They could do it, of course, but it would be really weird.
I'm just saying it's not 100%.
Right.
So
No, but nothing is 100%.
And you have a
Tomorrow
question?
they could do anything they want.
So when you were talking about getting this, like if they had a successful smart scale project. But and I'm new to all of this.
Sure.
So do I understand correctly from like Monday's meeting with the chart that the big projects are the ones that are
That are
getting
likely
done,
to get funded
right?
on the regional lists. However, let me just clarify this quickly. There are two different kinds of smart scale funding.
Yeah.
The one is called HPP, high priority projects, which is the thing that FAMPO and GWRC apply to. And then there's called district grant projects, which every one of your localities can apply to without FAMPO. So there are two different pots of smart scale money. And for our one, the regional one, HPP, your project has to be big. And you have to really put in some leverage funding if you really want to score well. The district grant funding, Carolina King George or the City of Fredericksburg or Spotsylvania or Stafford can apply on their own and do apply on their own and apply for projects. Those can be smaller projects. So there are two different pots of smart scale money.
I want to make sure I understood a clarification question. So I understand the taxes the state collects on the wholesale price, right? That goes into the fund, and then there's mechanisms to get some of that as a return. As I'm reading this and as you're presenting it, it appears as though on top of that, there's a local tax that the Central Virginia Transportation Commission of 7.6 cents per gallon for gasoline and 7.7 cents per gallon of diesel, correct? That they all pay.
They're not 7 and 7.
I'm just saying, local fuels here.
So
This is on top of, this is a local collected, it contributes to this general Central Virginia thing, right?
So John's going to hit me if I answer this question without him.
I just want to understand, that's all. I'm not challenging, I just want to make sure I understand.
That is being applied at the wholesale transaction price. So before it's even delivered to the pump, that's a per
The state,
amount.
Okay. So
And
you're
then you also
talking
have
about the
the
same.
cents
the
per,
state changed,
At retail, that's what I'm talking
the state
that's been flat.
the state changed the way they collect what they call the commuter rail. They don't tell you it's called the commuter rail gas tax, but it is actually the commuter rail gas tax. They changed it. It used to be so many cents and it used to be on the retail price. They've shifted it now to a percentage on the wholesale price, and they indexed it to inflation so that it goes up and down, right? It's a variable rate.
Drew's asking a different question. So let me try to rephrase your question if I can.
Okay.
So can you just go back to the slide, Connor, so we're all looking at the same thing?
Looking for.
This one right here.
Yeah.
So Drew's asking about this local fuels tax.
That's what I'm asking.
And so is this on top of what the Commonwealth charges across the board? That's the question.
That's my question.
That is everywhere across the state.
So that's no different than 7.6 is what you pay in Spotsylvania, what you pay in New Kent County.
The trick is
They're the whole-
RTA, it comes back to you. If you're not
Right.
RTA, it goes to the district.
So that is not an additional tax.
The whole state
Standard.
apply.
It's
Yeah.
It is.
the same thing, but the trouble is, and I'll tell you what the trouble is. The trouble is that all of these transportation authorities, when they publish their documents, they publish the documents and they put these cents and all that based on the day that they started operating. But the state then changed the calculation and made it a fluctuating rate on the wholesale price. And it is almost impossible to tell you what the tax is right now today because it's hidden. It's no longer on the retail price, it's on the wholesale price, and it fluctuates and it's indexed to inflation and it's a percentage, it's no longer a number of cents. So Connor has done a job of going to their documents and printing for you what they have on their document. But their document is on starting day, it was 7.6 cents a gallon.
So it has it.
So it fluctuates.
Deflation and everything goes down. That's the minimum. That's
Yeah,
actually.
I want to stop there though, because it's very complicated and we can go down this rabbit hole.
Yeah.
for hours.
It doesn't matter. The number.
We do have a couple of questions though.
On top or not.
Ian,
I have a very slight.
okay, so,
Sully,
yeah, no, well, I'm just trying to, can we ask a couple of questions? Okay, Sully, you want to go?
we'll ask everything we can answer. What we can't answer, we'll park and we'll say we'll find it out.
Okay, go ahead. And then, thank you.
So what I think I heard you say is that from the consumer's perspective, whether you're in one of these RTAs or not, at the pump, you see no difference. There's no change. Really, it's just a redirect of that funding goes.
Only on the gas tax. On the other ones, there may be a difference.
Sales
but
tax,
on
there may be.
Tax. the gas tax is already being levied. And Spotsylvania, for example, uses that money to fund their portion of the VRE contribution.
Okay.
But in your case, it just goes away.
We have no small businesses anyway, it's not gonna matter. I'm being facetious, but yeah.
You do buy gas.
Monica, do you?
Okay, so just clarifying question for something that you said, John. So you said that if you have an RTA, that you get that back. Is that consistent with all the RTAs that we're seeing that are functioning right now? I know we're looking at this one at the
That
moment.
is my next presentation. Yes, with an asterisk, because Northern Virginia and FAMPO are the oddballs.
Okay,
Because that goes into the rail fund, but
It's different.
okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
but
But generally,
Yeah.
we'll get, let's, perhaps we can.
Okay, yep,
Donna finish his
Yep,
presentation.
yep.
thank you.
So here you have a comparison, of the local distribution as compared to the population.
And there's the answer to that other question about the population.
So you see the Rikers at the top, their local distribution, which is what they receive back, is $34 million. So therefore the revenue collected or originated from them, 68 million. You see that they have a smaller population than Chesterfield County, but they do receive a higher local distribution. You see the same bins with Denver County receives $14 million a year. They have 111,000.
2.1 million.
And then you see a good example is Charles City County and Ashland. Charles City County has a smaller population, but receives almost double the local distribution. So it has nothing to do with size of
Population.
the population. It has everything to do with the commercial activity. Here you see the map. When we parse it, it's Richland, Patterson, and Kent are all comparable. Hanover County and City of Richmond are comparable. Charles City County, Ashland, Chesterfield.
You have all these materials, they were sent to you by email, so.
Yeah, and you have the packets.
Yeah.
Here you have the FY 23 complete table. You can find these in the agendas of the CBTA meetings. It's on the Plan RDA website. And this is where I got all this information from. Here we have more recently, it hasn't varied that much in terms of the operating has gone down. And the fees, the tax. One thing that's interesting is the adjusted revenue forecast, so VDOT has done projections. And you see from 2024 to 2030, keep in mind, this is just the amount that each jurisdiction would be putting into regional funds, would be 35%. And the total amount for the 2024 and 2030 going into the regional fund would be $398 million. Yeah, not including 50% in terms of cap. Here is an important thing. These are links to the CBTA documents. Within policies and procedures, non-binding governance guidance documents, that's where I found the line that says, the authority distributes local funds to jurisdictions based on the portion share of each jurisdiction's sales and gas tax each month. So we've taken the liberty of saving all of these PDF documents from the CTA website. We have them, click on them, have access to them, we have this. If you have any burning questions, I would recommend.
Yeah, so those links that we put in the document, which you all have, you can click on them and we've saved the reports for you on our server, so you can access them whenever you want to.
Okay, great. You have a question here.
So you talked about Chris, Virginia, and they have one thing in common, high taxes. And then we talked about Richmond. One of the things that Richmond has in common, all these areas are within Richmond. What we have different is that we are all different counties with different tax rates and different gas tax.
No, they also-
New Kent County is.
Just go back to the
I'm
map.
talking about in Richmond, right? Richmond.
No, that's not correct.
So each of those names are for different counties within the.
Go back to the entire one,
Transportation
because
Very
I saw City of Richmond,
They're in the middle.
Actually, Newport, it's got like,
City of
That it has a
Richmond,
button.
Richmond. And then, let me see.
Those are all counties, those others,
So.
except for
all
Chesterfield.
the
City and
jurisdictions.
There's four, right? Around Richmond, is that Henrico is where?
Henrico's right above Richmond.
Chesterfield. To give you a quick scale, King George would be bigger than 3 of these jurisdictions, I believe. So Charles City, New Kent, and Powhatan. So
King George will be
Yeah.
bigger geographically than those.
population.
Population. Remember, we're the fifth lowest in mass, like square
Maybe
miles.
I made the wrong assumption in my mind, like when I think about Richmond. All of these, yeah, all of these are kind of connected, and I'm thinking we are different in a way, the different counties are different.
What-
I think they're very different.
Yeah,
No, hang on a second, just when we say different, that is one city in the middle and then a whole lot of counties around it. We are one city of Fredericksburg in the middle, a small city,
mhm.
and 4 counties around it. So we're not exactly the same number of counties, we're not exactly the same number of population, but it's the same political system. It's counties surrounding a city. So it's
And
the
those counties range
same.
from suburban to pretty rural.
Yes,
Very-
so Charles City, New Kent and Powhatan have got combined the same population that King George has. So they're very rural.
Well, with all that green, I think that they're all kind of one, but yeah. okay.
No,
Very
that's
Yeah.
separate.
Very conservative.
When I say they are, which one is conservative?
Chesterfield.
Chesterfield?
I mean, even Henrico to a point, I would actually argue that Henrico is like similar to Stafford, Chesterfield is similar to Spotsylvania, and then City of Richmond, City of Fredericksburg. I think it's actually very analogous in that way.
Chester native from here, probably. So that's.
Yeah, and then you get New Kent and Charles City as the George and Caroline. Like, I mean, take away Hanover, Ashland, Goochland, Powhatan, take away the north and the west parts. To me, when I see that, I see something that is actually very similar to our region, those 5, New Kent, Charles City, Richmond, Henrico, and Chesterfield.
That's like FAMPO without those other 3.
Exactly, it's, yeah.
Sorry, GWL, I
Chesterfield
misspoke.
in 2 planning districts and 2 NPOs, because like we're talking about why Chesterfield might get a little less money. I'm from South Chesterfield. I identify more Client Heights, Petersburg, and Hopewell than I do Richmond. So that's my area growing up.
So it's a whole mix of
Different.
rural, urban, and it's a whole mix
Okay.
I mean, the difference here is, so they have 1.1 million
in
in
total.
population.
Yeah, it's different.
Northern Virginia has 2.1 million in population.
But the difference is the
You know,
size.
it's the size.
Just the size.
But 3 of
Just
their counties
to
are
us.
smaller than all of them.
But politically speaking, this is more.
Anyway,
Absolutely.
Okay,
Can we
so
move to the-
now let's move on to the next,
I mean, that's just-
John, I think you're up now.
John, you're.
I will.
Come to the conclusion it works, I think.
It's called-
I'd say we like it, yeah, but it is comparative, how's that?
The fact that people look.
Yeah.
Same thing, analogous to scale down.
Right, but just go.
We're the same but smaller.
Yeah.
We're the same but smaller.
So
Yeah.
dehydrated.
Dehydrated.
Remember, he's been skiing a lot.
Yeah.
Oh,
well,
I'm just.
I will be quick because a lot of this is summary information, but I'm gonna highlight.
And the board's too long together.
Which is Hampton Roads. Okay, that's a big one. But the one that often gets lost is the I-81 improvement corridor, because although it is, and I made a mistake in this presentation, I say it's 5 PDCs that stretch the entire I-81 corridor.
Yes.
And what both of these have in common than what you've heard tonight is that they're 100% regional. So all the authorities split up taxes differently. You notice they have like fuel tax that I'm gonna say it's collected over in Virginia, but comes kind of more to rail and transit down here. Also have an arrow for FAMPO that we are actually contributing up as well. But you can see how the splits are different. So on I-81, they do not have a sales tax. Unlike Hampton Roads, which has a sales tax, and other, I'll have a joke on that, but Richmond does not have the grand tourist tax or anything. So everybody's a little bit different. When you really want to look into say, okay, a very different authority, a very much more rural authority, I-81 improvement corridor continues because you have Washington County in and around Bristol, Smith, and Wythe County. Wythe County is the size of King George. It's 80 or 28,000 folks. It has a centralized town, 2 interstates coming through it. And if you notice, it actually has this big old improvement area, that's actually Interstate 77 that connects with 81 for a very brief time. And that's actually part of the I-81 improvement orders. Because while it targets improving I-81, it's actually including Route 11, which is kind of akin to our Route 1 here, as well as any other parallel highways and railways. So it expands a little bit further, and other related transportation facilities. So if they need rest stops or truckway stations, that's actually an avenue of doing it. They bring in about 80 million annually and slowly ticking up. But for them, they work a lot more closely with VDOT. Have a little bit more state control because they're covering by PDCs and a lot in POs. So they're a little bit more centralized and located, focusing on the I-81 corridor. So they have this that's basically just out of the fuels tax collected along the region, plus a small little bit that's kind of nicked off and sent to Northern Virginia, which referred to earlier, but that's where they are. And if you have driven the I-81 corridor and seen the construction along for a lot of the smaller towns and the off ramps, I'll use Abingdon here. It used to have the smallest paperclip that looked like the Route 1, Route 3, like Curla. That would have seemed huge compared to this one where we're coming uphill with trucks and then descending back down into the town and back to access Route 1. So there are a lot of small projects that were kind of critical for a lot of smaller towns that they were able to access the funding for. But again, they're building it out. They're doing spot improvements as well as slightly longer interstate improvements. And if you ever go down that route, there's a lot of stuff going on. With Hampton Roads, the big one, they're 100% regional, but their main focus is primary interstates as well. While they're different from I-81, their focus tends to be a little bit more the same. They're addressing other projects, but if you've gone down 64 anytime soon, that is basically the HR tech going full speed ahead. So again, I always like to put a little arrow that we're contributing a little bit to their other funds here because we're losing a little bit of money, but you can see where they are putting in 25 million, $3.3 billion, $209 billion. They're operating on just the regional scope. They're saying we're going to do big and we're going to do massive projects. And that's kind of the differences than say Northern Virginia. They still do big, as well as even the Richmond Authority, because the splits are a little bit different. These two have a much different purpose, but I just want to make sure that you are up to speed, that it can look very different depending on the regions and where and how it's being implemented. So that was my lead in for what Ian wanted to speak about.
So the question is, there are about 4 main things that if the region was to pursue a transportation authority, that we would need to try and find agreement on, right? So whichever jurisdictions want to participate, there's a few things we need to find agreement on. One of them is the one that you elected to talk about tonight, which is this. If you have a transportation authority, how would you split the funds between regional projects and the money that gets paid back to the local jurisdictions, the local counties, or whatever the case is? So when we first discussed this last year, I mean, I try to always be honest with you, right? Not to, I stay out of the politics. You guys all do the politics. I just advise you, and I try to just give you an honest answer. So frankly, I picked a number, right? Don't blame some mysterious hidden person, blame me, right? I picked a number because I had to try and get this conversation started because I was worried that they're going to do this legislation in Richmond without you. So I picked a number and I made a 60-40 split. Now, I've heard people talk out there and in the media, oh, it's going to be 60-40 split. But don't blame anyone else except me. And I have no rights. I have no vote. You're all my boss. So you can put whatever number you want. All I did was to start the conversation. I put 60-40. But essentially, if we're going to make a recommendation to the state, to the General Assembly, it must be whatever you think. Forget about what I think. I'm just the staff member that serves at your pleasure. So we would like to hear from you what you think, because when we get there in however many months and you do have a vote and you finally vote, what would you like the proposal to be? I'll make the proposal whatever it is you want. So Don't argue about the 60-40. Forget about that. That was my starting point to just start the discussion. You decide whatever you think is the right thing to do. And as John's just shown you, everybody does it differently. MBTA, Monica, who just was here, they do a 70-30 split. 70% goes to regional projects, 30% they hand the cash back to the jurisdiction. Hampton Roads, 100% goes to regional projects, no dollars go to local projects. Richmond, you just saw that presentation, 50% goes back to the local jurisdiction, 35% goes to regional projects, and 15% goes to transit, right? So each one is different. It's entirely up to you, and there's nobody holding a gun to your head. Bearing in mind that all we're going to do at the end is make a recommendation, if you decide, to the state. They can still overrule us. They can do it tomorrow. They don't have to listen to us. But we're trying to get them to listen. And when we try to get them to listen, we want to make a proposal. So you all, I would suggest you discuss now for however many
Yeah,
minutes.
so I think what we could do is just kind of go around, maybe, if that's, so that we, you know, so we can ping pong each other, so. Okay,
I don't feel like I have enough.
okay, that's fine, you can
That's fine.
pass, and
But I'm open to different things.
Kathy,
I'll throw a number out, a different one, 50-50.
okay. Sally,
I would say 40-60.
Which way?
You get,
Regional 60.
the regional gets 40 and the county gets 60.
Okay.
okay, Bob. Monica?
I would like to see more focus on regional, so I would weight it a little heavier on the regional, but I think the regional and local, I don't think we need a transit option.
So
So,
do you have?
I'm just clarifying that because one of them included a 15% for transit, so regional and local, so I would think that the regional should be weighted a little more. I don't have a preference on the number right now, but I think we should focus on regional.
okay. Drew?
Yeah, it's principally regional, 50-50 local. However, I'd like the definitions of what local is, because,
What local, it's.
and it can be whatever.
It's simple. The local definition is we give it back to the county.
And
Yeah.
you can do whatever.
That's all it means.
That's it.
So then it would.
So you do whatever you want, provided it's linked to transportation, as Monica said earlier,
Yeah.
you do whatever you want.
The
with the money.
jurisdiction gets to make up.
So Spotsylvania County.
And I want
decide-
to change mine, then I'd probably go the other way then, 60-40 or something.
Which ways? 60
regional?
See, I'm trying to look at it like, what are the regional problems we have right now? And we just solved a bunch of them where we just put a big dent in the regional problem crossing with 95. So, but we did. We did put a big dent.
For a couple years.
Well,
Yeah.
we did. Okay, we did. I've lived here for 20 years and we put a big dent in it. Will it get worse? Yeah, it will. Will other things happen? Yes.
Yeah.
But what are the priorities? Are there and I don't really have enough data to tell you either way. So that's why I'm kind of like sitting.
Okay.
Deontay?
60-40, 60 for regional, 40 for local.
I'm actually going to say 70-30, and the reason I will is just math. Right now, with the way that Smart Scale is structured for HPP, they are putting such weight, and I mean, maybe too much. I'm not gonna make that argument or not, but they are putting so much weight on local match right now. So much that if we want any of these projects in the future, I don't see a way we get them without it. There is no large scale bridge project, no large scale road widening project without it in the next 5 to 10 years from what I'm hearing. So I would like to go 70-30 because I don't see an alternative.
70% regional.
70% regional, 30% local.
Interesting.
I don't see a way out.
It's all range.
I think, I mean, for me, the Richmond model is that I'm gonna be the only one at the table here who's gonna make an argument for transit, right? And I'm thinking about the presentation that Ian made on Monday night, right? In which we talked about the ways in which sort of trips are evolving, right? And is with the potential decline of standard commute, right? That we have more complicated transportation and transit problems going in more directions, and that that argues that in the future, we're gonna have to be thinking more about local transit rather than interregional commuter transit. And I think that for me, that is a real struggle area of this region. I think that our transit is laughably bad compared to our peer regions, right? And so for me, I would be more interested in something that looks like the Central Virginia split. I don't know that I'm committed to only 35% regional. I think I agree, but I would like to see some carve out for transit, because I think that this is a problem. That is the area where I see where we are vastly behind other regions is a usable transit system that isn't focused on just getting people in and out of DC.
I have a question. Can I ask a question regarding transit?
Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah, I was just wondering, so, of the local or the regional, that doesn't exclude us, does it, from using any of those funds towards transit? But if we create a transit category, it would allocate only to transit for that category, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, so we could still use some of those funds for transit, even if we didn't carve out a specific category.
Well, I think the difference is also capital versus operating, right? She made it clear that the 70% funds for Northern Virginia, the regional funds could be used to construct transit capital improvement projects, but transit operating could only come out of the 30% local. The localities had to make decisions.
So in Richmond, it's different. In Richmond,
Okay.
it's a fixed amount.
Right.
Which they don't have in Northern Virginia, but the fixed amount can be used for capital or operating.
Right.
As I understand it.
That's my concern. Is that
So
I
each one's
operating.
different.
Oh, well, we can.
so I wanted,
Ted, do you have a
well, I wanted to see if Chris had any,
Chris or Meg?
Chris or Meg. Did you guys have any?
Oh, I have lots of comments.
Oh, too bad
First-
you're not here, bye.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Chris.
Okay, well, real quick, something to remember when it comes, can you hear me okay, guys?
Yeah.
Okay, all right, something to remember when it comes to Northern Virginia, and I kept hearing about, oh, the little towns. Well, the little towns are stuck in the middle of the big counties. So it's not the same thing, and it's very different in my opinion. We are dealing with one of two things. Either we focus heavily on interstate connections and interstate improvements, or local roads. In my opinion, we've done too much for the interstate, or enough for the interstate, let's just say, and not enough for local roads. And we need to focus on that interconnections between localities. When it comes to a breakdown of the money, what does 30% or 60%, or I'm sorry, 40%, whatever the localities will receive back, is that 40% of what they put in? Is that what we're talking about?
That was of the revenues you receive.
The revenues you generate.
The revenues that are generated from your jurisdiction.
Okay.
40% would come back to you as a jurisdiction.
And that would be fine to me, because King George, I would assume, doesn't really need a lot of transit. The city might want to go more transit heavy, just like Spotsy might want to do a little bit, but not a lot. So I think it'd be up to our jurisdictions to decide what we would like to do. I would be more of a 70-30, because I think a lot of these projects are regional, bigger, and we're going after bigger pots of money. So mark this one down. Jason and I actually agree on something.
Wow.
It is 8:06. Oh my God, it's a leap day. It's gonna happen in 4 years. There you go, Chris. Every
will
4
happen
years,
once
we'll
every-
agree on something.
We want that in
Once every
writing.
4 years. Yes, that's a good one. Yeah.
Please put
All
that in the minutes.
All right. Thank you, guys.
My 2 cents would be, I would say more leaning towards the 60 or 50-50 type thing. In Spotsylvania, we have a lot of rural areas that don't get a lot of attention for transportation dollars. And I know that we want to move traffic and that sort of thing, but in those areas in Livingston and Berkeley, they really do get not a lot of love, and they need it. And those projects can be pricey, and they constantly get kind of pushed to the back of the burner because of that. And they shouldn't be forgotten just because actually in those areas, we've had numerous accidents. We don't have shoulders, it's bad. Out in Livingston and in Berkeley, they're trying to do the shoulder hardening stuff as we can. But it's just not, so I feel like if we went more, there's things in Spotsylvania that I feel get neglected because they don't have the population, and I would want some of those dollars to come back to that. So I would say more of a 50-50.
So my question is, this is just a comment listening. Do you have to determine the percentage first before determining what the projects are? Because to me,
So there is an answer to that question. The legislation is going to specify the breakdown, right? Once that breakdown is in the legislation, you can still change it, but then you got to go back to the General Assembly to go ask them to change it. So it's harder to change. However, the projects are not going to be specified in the legislation.
I understand
So
that.
you
That's
can
one of the
change that.
reason why I was
So you-
saying, yeah, I wasn't finished my question before.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, it's okay. Because if you kind of, you're throwing out numbers. But if you look at the project, you say these are the regional projects, and you're doing it all along anyway on FAMPO, right? These are the projects that we're working on, and this is a huge one that, all of us could collaborate on. And then figure out, okay, there's 3 or 4, and this is the percentage that it will take on. And then you could kind of get like a gauge and saying 40-60 or 50-50 or whatever. Like right now, we're throwing out the numbers and like, are you thinking about the projects, the big projects that, and then transit, for example, local transit, having a bus to go from here to there. How much money would that be for every locality? You just mentioned something about an area is not getting much love. So if you think about the project, then maybe you could get closer to the percentages that everybody could agree on.
I think that's
Sorry?
item. I think he's going over that next.
Oh, sorry, what were you
Okay.
gonna
I was gonna say, I was doing some back of the envelope calculations here, that if we had a funding model similar to Richmond's, adjusting it for the proportional population size, rough numbers were about 32% of the population, so I just multiplied their FY 23 year-to-date revenue, and we're talking about, if this is ballpark, right, this is a rough adjustment for proportional for population, we're talking about 67,576,000.
It all depends on which taxes you put
I
in.
know, I'm saying, if in a hypothetical world where we had a similar model to Richmond's, right, so I'm saying that we could build on this idea, right, if we had falling $67 million a year to spend, and put that up against what are the projects, we could arrive at some conclusions about. I mean, these numbers are obviously made up back of the napkin.
Right.
That gives us a sense of the order of magnitude of dollars that we're potentially talking about here.
Our guess.
Hello?
is depend-
Hello? Hi, Meg.
That's a voice.
Hi,
Well,
I was
welcome
wondering
back.
if I could put my 2 cents in.
Absolutely.
Okay, and I don't know if I'm coming in too loud or not.
You're good.
Perfect.
Okay,
We won't tell you.
okay.
I'm curious.
And since
Oh,
this
sorry.
is a committee meeting, I think it's okay that we have more than 3 people there. But I love what you just did on the back of the envelope, because that's what I was thinking, is that will go to the next meeting. Is let's look at some extrapolation of the numbers from the other localities and their populations, et cetera. So I see Pam and hang on.
Where you see? I didn't know.
Yeah, it's fine.
Oh, there's a camera. I think-
It's fine.
Is there a camera?
Meg, we're just, when you said that there's 4.
It's a
I
committee
think
meeting. It's a committee.
Right.
So it doesn't,
Right, it's
it doesn't
fine.
matter.
So what, right,
Yeah.
We have alternates sitting in all the time.
So-
right, it's fine.
There's no voting. I was cool.
Okay, so
Well-
here's what I also want to say. It's very interesting observing this meeting while online when I'm typically in the room. So we have 5 brand new city council or supervisors sitting in the room. So I think this has been a great, very robust conversation. I loved Monica's presentation. And for me, my number would be 70-30. And I agree with the whole regional approach. I think that that has to be our focus, because we can all deal with our local projects where we choose to put our money. But at the end of the day, it's about congestion and moving people through this region when, as we all know very well, what happens on 95. And even if there's not an accident on 95, it's just the volume of cars during the summertime and what happens to our secondary roads. And so that's why I believe it's about this whole regional approach, having more north-south roads to travel on. And so that's where I am, is on the 70-30. I'd have to do a little bit more research and looking at the transit component. And maybe it's, I think somebody said this, you look at the city and then maybe a little bit of North Spotsylvania, and I'm not sure how it impacts Stafford. I'd have to gather more information on that, but I appreciate you letting me weigh in.
Thanks, Meg. Yeah, sure.
Since now that I've heard the, I would say, a good 65-35 is like a compromise, but no.
That's a whole nother category now.
Yeah.
Oh,
But
dear.
I do want to say.
the
that
mediator.
Definitely, yeah, that's like. But just to lean definitely on the region. I feel like, the real benefit to doing this is for regional transportation and for us all to benefit from the region moving better. So, yeah, I would definitely want to lean that way.
But I think the argument then comes in from King George and Caroline. Are they truly benefit? And so as we
And
think
I
of
would
this-
say, no, if
think
I may.
Yeah.
You actually benefit more from a larger regional share, because when it's a larger one of the things I really liked about the NVTA presentation, that first question I asked was about the balance among the localities. Because with a larger regional balance, you're actually more likely to get a larger project done. If more just goes straight back to the locality, you don't really get that multiplier effect. You get it when either one of two things happens. Either one, you get to benefit from the whole region chipping in at once for something that's there in King George. Or number two, we get to use it for an HPP project, and then that local match gets multiplied 4 or 5 or 6 times because we've shown that we've got that local match, and now the Commonwealth's going to come in with big dollars, and that we really get to see that happen.
But name me one project in King George that's affiliated with King George that is a huge regional project.
No, that's not the point. So one of the things that I love
Isn't-
about the NVTA presentation is that some of their projects resided in one and only one jurisdiction. They had projects that were just in Loudoun County or just in Fairfax County, but they knew that those projects, even though they resided solely within one jurisdiction, benefited the region. And for King George, I mean, that 301 corridor absolutely benefits the whole region if you are able to move people more freely up and down that 301 corridor.
And that's where the problem comes in, because VDOT has said that 301 is the alternate to I-95. But we have a lot of troubles right now, especially with accidents and speeding,
Yes.
because VDOT has that. But I don't see how that money is going to solve the problem, because VDOT has decided that we are an alternative to 95. So where I'm coming from is some of these projects that would benefit us, like some help with maybe some roundabouts going through it. But the problem is VDOT has stated they don't approve of us putting those things in. So how does it benefit?
So what I would argue, if I may continue, Madam Chair, thank you, is that, okay, so let's say VDOT has designated 301 as a 95 alternate. Fine, that decision has been made. 301 is meant to be a particular type of road in that judgment. Not saying I agree with it, of course, but putting that aside, that means that there are other roads in King George that can then be, improved upon, so that however VDOT imagines that transportation network to look, you will still have the ability to then build it if you have the regional funds, because what we can then say is 301's an alternate to 95, fine, VDOT, but now we need to look at local roads so that the people in King George can still get where they need to go within the region, and then the through traffic on 301 can still proceed unimpeded. That is still a regional concern that we will all have because 301 is an area of regional significance. And that's why I still think the regional one helps King George more than being heavier on the local side.
And Ian, you had a comment.
Yeah, I'm not gonna comment on the percentages because you all make that decision. I just want to comment on this benefit. What's the benefit to anybody? So you remember we put like just a guess as to a bunch of projects last time, and we've got the slides for you again today. There is no ways, unless something changes, that Caroline County can pay for that brand new bridge to connect their new widened road, the Ladysmith Road, across I-95 and upgrade that intersection. They don't have $110 million or whatever the number is, right? I don't know what the number is going to be, but it's going to be a big number. Caroline County is never going to, from their taxpayers, get that full amount of money. However, if we have a regional pot of funding and over a number of years, 5 years or 10 years, we put aside that as one of the projects we're going to fund, the region will then put in way more money together than Caroline can raise from their taxpayers on their own, and use that money to leverage smart scale money for the balance, or a federal build or mega or infra grant for the balance, right? So now Caroline doesn't have to come up with 110 million. You've got some seed capital to make the local match out of this regional pot. And you then go and get the balance from either smart scale or one of these big federal grants, and you can build a $110 million bridge and interchange. Caroline is not going to be able to afford it. In King George, we didn't pick a big project and put it in the list for a very specific reason. The reason VDOT can make these statements like we've decided that 301 is going to be is because they control the studies and the research and everything else. What, in my view, and this is just my opinion, King George needs first is money to fund a study so that you have a counter argument to people in Richmond telling you what to do on your roads, right? The study itself produces the data, produces the local community input, right? Because you've got to have public hearings, you've got to have local input. And you then come up with a workable plan that is sensible, that has local input, and that has got specific measures that the local county can get behind to build on your triangle, what I call the triangle, which is 301, 206,
Yeah.
and 3, right? But then it's coming from the ground up because you ran the study. But you've got to fund the study. You've got to get a consultant who's got some kind of credibility with VDOT to put the study together, to go and look at the options. And 206 on the travel demand model is showing it's going to be red by 2050. It's going to be congested, right? You've made two changes. The one is, well, not you, the state built this new Harry Nice Bridge, which has put much more traffic into the region.
Yes.
And then you guys took a decision to stop trucks on 206. Those two things are changing the model that VDOT based their decision on. Things have happened. So what you've got to do now is go do a new study on the triangle. And that study will come up with the projects that you need. And we put a line there which said, first big infrastructure project in King George, but we didn't put a dollar amount, we put a question mark, because you need the study first to identify what the project is. So I'm not going to sit here at FAMPO and go, or at GWRC and go, hey, this is your project, you have to have it. I'm going to say, let's fund your study, which you participate in, and VDOT has to attend. And then you come up with the project, and then the Regional Transportation Authority then funds that as the next project, because now we know what the project is. We now know what we have to do. Is it that we have to upgrade the intersection with 206 and Route 3? Is it that we have to widen 206? Is it that we have to put in traffic circles all the way up 206 so that the cross traffic can get in. I don't know, right? It would be stupid of me to tell you what the project is. It's easier for me with Caroline because they have this obvious big project. It's less obvious with you, but that doesn't mean you don't have needs. It means that we haven't done the study, so we can't pick the project out of the sky. We need to do the study. So we should put into the cluster of things, A, study, and B, a project yet to be determined in King George County, which will be funded by this thing. And I promise you, in 1 or 2 years, you're not going to be able to raise the funds to build this big project. If you've got a regional pot and the commitment of all these folks around this table to say we will fund a project, you need a project, and then we will commit to funding it, partly from the regional pot and partly from a grant, either a federal grant or a small scale project. You then get your project funded with help, right? And the same thing the other way. You all help each other's project. But we didn't pick the project for you because the study hasn't been done. And what you don't want, and VDOT might be cross with me after I say this, but what you don't want is VDOT with a big gun to your head telling you how you got to do it. What you want is to fund a good study that you participate in, VDOT participates in, and then this consultant then tells you the things that you really need are to widen this, to put a turn lane here, to put a traffic circle there, and that will fix your 40-year problem. And then you fund it through the Transportation Authority. Unfortunately, we didn't pick a project for you so we can show you, you know, if I was a marketing guru, I would have said, wait, there's this great project, let me fund it for you. And then when the argument, I didn't do that. Because if I did that, it would be like being like VDOT, telling you what you need. Whereas you should be working with a consultant to determine what you need, and then the project goes in that list.
So one of the things that I didn't ask her, but Monica mentioned that they did not get a lot of stuff from Smart Scale.
I know that.
And I'm like, wait a minute, this whole thing.
They will next round.
But they didn't.
It was before HPP. HPP was not part of the last Smart Scale round. That HPP is a new thing.
Well, no, it was, but the step two changed that paradigm because we could score well in step 2 because we didn't need the match. Now step 2 is gone, and from this year on, the match suddenly becomes super important because they now do a cost benefit analysis in order to score the projects. So watch this space. Northern Virginia and Hampton Roads are going to do very well. And the only time they didn't do well is about the last 2 years. We didn't have a chance to ask her, but if you ask her back before those last 2 years, she would have given you a different story. The last 2 years, what got funded was a lot of bike and pedestrian projects, which is what made some of those Northern Virginia people really angry because they said, we've got big road projects we have to fund, and you keep funding a VCR trail in Fredericksburg, right? They got real cross about that, right? Because they wanted a big highway funded, and we got instead a bike and pedestrian path. So that made them angry. The point is that only in the last couple of years has she not done well in Smart Scale. But go back.
Well, that to me spoke volumes. Because when we first started talking about this, we kept talking about how we can't, you know, we have to have matching funds. That was the cornerstone of getting funding. And then when she said that, I thought, okay, well, but I see what you're saying.
We worried it's going to go the other way this round now. We're worried that our region's going to get nothing because we don't have the match.
Right.
And the counterpoint is, if you look at Hampton Roads, that nice map that John showed there of all those projects, there, see all that? They put in hundreds of millions of dollars and got hundreds of millions of dollars of Smart Scale to leverage those big projects in Hampton Roads.
And I will say this, for the Hampton Roads one, that is, everybody has the same need in Hampton Roads, and that was all of the highway work on 64. I mean,
the bridges,
and all of that. I mean, none of them, I think they all understand that they are very dependent on that one project.
And
it has made a huge difference. I mean, from 20 years ago when I was going down there all the time for work to now, I drive down there, I'm like, oh my gosh, this is lovely, you know. until you reach the bridge tunnel. But, you know, it's gotten a lot better.
The Spotsylvania transportation staff will tell you about this picture here and about how Hampton Roads leverage smart scale by putting down $200 million. Then they're asking for a small 100 million. Try to get 100 million here.
Yeah,
We can't get the 100
They're
million.
doing 100% because they all know they're,
right. I mean, that everybody could get on board with what the
Oh,
what the
yeah.
priority was there.
Yeah, we're not gonna be that way.
Yeah, but so, okay, so we've run the whole gamut on I don't think we've come to any consensus about the percentages. We all just kind of gave our percentages and.
Track of.
So I have 150-50, I have 60-40.
Yeah, 2 60/40s.
Actually, I was a 60-40. You were a 60-40, right?
I was 50-40.
Yeah, okay.
House, I couldn't make up.
So like maybe 4 60-40,
But it's always.
3 4 60-40s,
I don't.
3 70-30s.
No.
A unicorn.
No, it was Jason, Meg, and Chris.
Yep.
Were the 70-30s.
I would be in favor of that as well. I didn't pick a number,
Okay,
but I think some.
And I would
some
switch mine.
So there's 4.
Balance.
70-30,
Okay,
Makes sense.
it made sense. I like what I'm hearing, so I
Or
would
said whatever.
and, yeah, I did.
55, 40.
Okay,
Janet.
and then, well, I put you as Central Virginia.
Yeah, I mean, I actually, this is not something I have a super strong opinion about.
Okay.
To me, the difference between, I think we actually have pretty close, I mean, to me, the difference between 60-40 and 70-30, or even 50-50 and 70-30 is not that big, and I would honestly be pretty happy with any of those models. I was just trying to make the case that I want to make sure that we are thinking about transit in this context, in some.
Please pull up the last presentation.
Like that is my point. Like the
Okay.
numbers actually don't, I will be talking to any of those ratios, as long as you're thinking about transit.
Right, so I think we have a consensus.
So
Okay.
that is an important point, and we're as staff happy to leave it there. The point is, we're hoping that over the next 2 months, you'll all convince each other of some happy middle.
Well, you better get on that 70-30, that's gonna have to be a big convince on the King George side.
I'm not very
30
good
is
either.
even worse than 60-40.
So we're hoping, there's no decision tonight. There's no decision tonight. We're hoping you will slowly convince each other of whatever the right thing is. I have no view. I'm staff. I have no view. We're just hoping.
Yes, you do.
Well-
We know.
Well, I told you honestly that I put the 60-40 in the document, right? So there's no secrets, but that was just a starting point.
Could put 80-20, you know.
Pick a number, I'll put it in
No.
the document, whatever number.
I
You
had to say it just because.
So the last presentation, we just want your quick opinion on before you go tonight. And then you need to decide if you want to have another meeting next month or the following month, but I'll leave that to you. The last presentation, you've seen it already. Connor, can you please click on what the RTA would be funding? So we put together a list of proposed projects because, again, like with the 60-40, I've got to give you something to start with. Because if I give you a blank piece of paper, we would be here all year. So I give you a sample, but like the 60-40, throw it away, right? This is just a sample. There's nothing cast in concrete, but we want your opinion. If you think it's terrible, tell us. If you think it's sort of okay, but you want to change this one thing. So we're going to run through them like lightning. We're not going to explain it all to you. You've seen it all before. We're just going to quickly flip through these to remind you of what the projects were, right? That's all we're doing. So there's the Harrison Road interchange, the bridge widening. I think that cost estimate is a bit low because there's going to have to be possibly some land takes. So I think that it's going to increase with land. So I think we're going to be over 100 million. But anyway, that's the first project. Next one, the I-95 widening, that's adding a lane because the new lanes stop at exit 130 and at 126 there's all the new development in Spotsylvania, so we need a lane to just take it that far, right? So that's a lane. 134 million is the last quote we got, last estimate.
Yeah, I know.
Is that both directions or just southbound?
So for smart scale, we're applying for the southbound first, but ultimately it's going to have to be one north and one south. Next one, the River Crossing Parkway. remember those dotted lines are just illustrative. That's not where it'll be. We have the study on the go now to decide what the best alternative is, whether or not we should do it and so on. So there's that project. Next one. The Enon connector, that is to open up the Centerport Parkway on and off ramps to Southern Stafford, because at the moment Southern Stafford can't get to the highway through there. There's no way. So that's what that does. Next slide. Mineport Road connector, I suspect that some of this will be paid by the developers along that route. So we won't have to fund all of it. We would.
Don't count on that.
Well, in order to get access to their land, they have to have a road. So they're going to have to contribute. So we think that a good chunk of this, but not 100%. A good chunk will be paid by the developers. Next one, the Ladysmith. This is the Ladysmith one, right? So they've widened the road to the left of that diagram into 4 lanes, and then you get to the bridge, and the bridge is only 2 lanes. And the on-ramp and off-ramp there are limited. So you'd have to upgrade to 4 lanes and the on-ramp and off-ramp and a little bit into the eastern side of Caroline so that it doesn't stop with 4-lane bridge and then again go dead, right? So that's that. Next one. The King George Triangle. Here's what I was saying earlier. You first do the study, but you see the bottom line there is very important, and it gets lost in the discussion, I think, in King George. Upgrade project post-study. Cost to be determined. We can't give you a cost because we don't know which the project is. But we're saying that you tell us, we pay for the study, you get a consultant, you have public meetings, you pick the project, we then fund the project, but I'm not going to put the project in there for you unless you know what the project is, then you tell me and we happily add it to the slide. But this is the proposal, that you do the study to find out how bad it is and what the project should be. Next one. These next 3 are studies to find out whether we do need an eastern bypass and where we would do it. So that's just a study. Next one. Southern bypass study. That's the other side through Spotsylvania. Some of those roads exist. Some of them don't. Can they be lined up? Can't they? I don't know. Spotsylvania will need to tell us, and we run the study and pay for it. Next one. And this is the western bypass. So we're working on the close-in bridge. One day there's going to have to be another bridge, but where's the right place to put it? I don't know, because we haven't done the study. We can do a study and fund it, and we can look at those other 3 options, or maybe there's a 4th option, I don't know, but we can find out. And then next one, the VCR tunnel. This is the only bike ped project on the list. It's the expensive part. The rest is being funded, the rest is being organized, but this is the part that we can't find the money for, because the tunnel is pricey. To get under the highway, you've got to fund it somehow. And we had the study which looked at going over the highway or going around. And the ultimate solution was, because of the gradient, you're going to have to do the tunnel. So there's a possible option there. And then the last one is a high capacity transit project. We have not put the route on because we need the transit operators to be part of that. Or it could be a different transit project, right? You can scrap this all together and decide you just want to fund more frequent buses, or whatever the case is. But that's the package we put together. How do you feel about that? People expressed themselves last time, but we just want your guidance, because what we're trying to do is help you build a package of things that you can vote on at the end. Not today, like at the end of this process. A package of projects, a split in the local versus regional, who's going to be on the board, and then eventually the taxes. And those would be the things that you would discuss at the next meeting or 2 meetings, if you have more meetings, are who's going to be on the board and how they're going to vote. And then finally, which taxes would you be able to live with? Those are the other 2 things. So those 4 things, if you agree those 4 things, then we can make a recommendation which the policy committee can vote on. So the 4 things are the package of projects, the split between local and regional money,
Who's on it?
who's on the board, and how is their vote going to be weighted, and then which taxes are we able to live with. I would suggest you do the taxes last, because we're waiting to hear about the state's budget and how certain items are going to fall. The governor wanted a 1% sales tax. The majority in both houses don't want the 1% sales tax, so we'll have to wait and see how that falls. So my suggestion to you is that you do that at the last meeting. But my opinion is you don't need more than about 2 more meetings, and then you can put together a resolution. But it's up to you. If you have any comments on this list, we happily will change all of these projects if you don't like them. But we had to try and give you a scenario because otherwise it's a blank sheet and then you spend hours going around in circles.
So I think we should definitely have another meeting. I think that if we don't, then we lose momentum. And I think we need to. So I don't know, Meg, I don't know what. I don't know if I defer to the standing, to the chair on this.
Of this meeting, you are the chair.
Oh,
So
well, I want to be respectful of Meg's
If-
authority.
if Meg has a view, she should speak, right? She's here, right here, listening to us.
Yes, I'm here. I will go with the will of the committee. I would agree that I think we need at least one more meeting, maybe two, depending on what happens at the next meeting. And we can have it whenever the committee sets it, or we could do it before a FAMPO meeting.
So my only thing is FAMPO meetings tend to be pretty long. And I hate to discount the importance of us having dialogue and trying to run through it too fast. So I'd like to do it, I mean, my preference, I'm just speaking for me, is to do it on a separate day. So,
I'll just throw out a day just to start the discussion.
okay,
I mean, how does the fourth Thursday, in this case, the 28th of March, work? Again, I'm trying to think of days where,
that's our public hearing for our taxes.
oh, it is?
It is, yeah.
Okay, so also spring break, yeah.
That's the important stuff.
What date is your board meeting?
Yeah, look good for the meeting.
If I have it scheduled that far in advance, it's good.
Do you have a Monday
Well, no, well, Monday is, I mean,
or the third Thursday?
well, I was gonna ask about the fourth Wednesday. I want to say, and I could be wrong, but I feel like the end of the month tends to be less crowded for folks in the beginning, but I could be wrong.
Are you looking at the
we-
20th?
Oh, I was gonna say the 27th.
Yeah, we can't do that.
27th?
We do budget meetings.
Budget meeting.
Oh, okay,
We have a meeting on the.
We have a budget meeting.
okay.
There's a meeting on the.
What, on the 27th?
Oh,
I don't have it on my calendar.
I don't have that on my calendar.
Oh, wait, let me see.
We
Hold on.
can't.
Relax.
I don't-
This is a-
You were like,
We
what?
can't do the 20th.
On the town hall.
no, right, yeah.
Can we do the 21st? It's the same as the FAMPO meeting, which is the same as this.
We have a budget meeting on the 21st. Oh, that's at 11.
This will be an evening meeting, presumably at 6 p.m.
That might just be mine.
I could do the 21st.
First evening is good for me.
The 21st.
Meg and Chris, are you guys good for the 21st?
I'll be there.
Yeah, the 21st is good.
21st is good at 6 p.m.
Six.
6 p.m. on the 21st, is that good for people?
That works perfect.
And what
Yep.
do you want to discuss at the next meeting so that we can prepare anything you need us to prepare?
I
Yes.
think, can I weigh in?
Sure.
Please.
I think what Will did, kind of doing an extrapolation of what the numbers would look like with the population at the different scenarios, like a 70-30 and a 60-40 and a 50-50, and just see what, I think that's what we need to hone in on, is what does it look like for the different localities?
Okay,
Yeah.
we'll present a table for you.
And I would
Thank
say,
you.
for me personally, and I'm only speaking for me personally, I think, we're gonna have we'll have another board meeting before this meeting so that we can bring this to our board, what we've discussed, so we can get consensus from the rest, because,
Sure.
I can't, we individually can't speak for our board.
And you've got some new members.
Yes.
Good.
All right.
Do you want to also talk about at the next meeting, the makeup of the board?
Yes.
I think it would be helpful to go ahead and start that.
Yeah.
I don't think we'll use 2 hours just.
So there's two items.
You never
Doing
know.
the extrapolation of.
Started to back.
So there are only two items on the next agenda. There's no guest speaker. There's only two items, and that is the split extrapolation numbers, so we can give you a table with some options, and then the makeup of the board and how the board votes. That's it. 2 items. We get them done.
Mr. Chairman, may I? Real quick, also, I think we should also look at how we prioritize projects ahead of time. So that there's some consensus on how we will do something like that. Plus, I would like to see that we don't make up projects, that we have projects in the pipeline, and if we don't, then this RTA, the money goes back to the localities. If we have a year in the future where we don't have a project, we're not just rushing to do something. We need to make these things actually make sense and accomplish something.
So we can discuss that at the next meeting?
Yes, please.
So I have the makeup of the board, the extrapolation of the numbers, the method we would use that you all would use to prioritize the projects. And then what would happen
Maybe the last
if there
meeting
are
would
no
be about
projects.
taxes,
Yeah,
the last meeting,
I'm on purpose.
because that's gonna be a blood.
Well, I'm on purpose.
All right, ready.
I'm on purpose suggesting to you that you put that as the last,
Gotta get limber.
because by then you will know what the state is doing on other issues. So you've then got at least a little bit of, because if the governor's proposal falls off, which it sounds like it's going to, it's not quite as stressful as if the governor put his 1%, right? If that 1% is off the table, which we will know in a month or two, you then have some more wiggle room.
Yeah.
If you've got to also the governor's 1%, then it gets real hard.
That changes.
Yeah.
the population.
So we're gonna table the taxes until the last one. So we're all good, Megan, Chris, any parting comments?
No, thank
No,
you,
thank
Madam
you.
Chair.
No, thank you. I'm good too.
Thank you so much. Okay, and with that, I guess we're adjourned. Oh, I get to do this again?
Well done.
Feel the power.